That's what I was thinking, like a plastic butterfly.
Nice. Nice.
Hello, my fellow Alaskans. How are we all doing out there today on this bright and beautiful day? We are here right now to listen and hear from Dr. Douglas Frank and take a moment right now. You guys all know what to do is take a moment, like, share this video, subscribe to us, click the bell to be notified every time we go live. And if you're not following us, take the time, click that button, start following us right now. We're here to listen to the updates and status of where our elections actually stand, the research that has been done going back quite a few years, mainly focusing on the 2016-2020 and the current election that is about ready to come. And again, please take a moment, like and share this video. You guys' support is always welcomed. And that is one of the ways we can make sure as many people as we possibly can get to watch and see and hear this for themselves. This is my second event to live stream right now for Dr. Frank on to be able to get to hear these results. This one's going to be kind of a little bit of a cut down compared to the one that I did on Sunday. That one lasted nearly 4 hours, but it was worth every second of that to be able to sit and watch all the way through and listen to the data and the information that is going to be coming out here today. Again, if you're just joining us, you can find us always on X, or Twitter, as it's more famously known as, YouTube, Facebook, and this is also streaming live on Rumble. And anytime you're on our website and we are live, you can find us on Politadick Live on our own website. It's a portable carrier video player to where you can go and surf other things and do other things and still be able to watch this video without being interrupted, something that Facebook has taken away from all of us. And if you are on Facebook, send us some stars, show us some love. We always appreciate that. And while you're at our website, please go to the support page. Your support is what makes it possible for me to be able to make it to these events. And I really do appreciate the support. It has been coming through here since I got back into the game on Sunday and started rebroadcasting again and making sure you guys are seeing what mainstream media won't cover and won't even talk about normally. I am currently looking for your support. Your support has made this broadcast possible. Without supporters like you, I wouldn't be here. The services required to be able to do these kind of streams on all of these platforms, it's not cheap. And your support has made it possible to keep renewing them year after year, and it's greatly appreciated. One day I have a dream. My dream is to have people like me all over the state streaming on Politadick every event that is going on, whether it be an assembly meeting, community council meeting, a school board meeting, you name it, no matter where it's happening in our state. Send someone a camera and let them start live streaming, and your support can make that possible. And those who have already signed up for our monthly subscription is greatly appreciated. The $5 is the first entry part to get onto the monthly subscription. And the subscription is just meaning that you want to support us and make sure that we continue to do what we keep doing. Through your subscriptions, we're able to keep our cell phones up and running right now, and we're hoping to expand that beyond just the one-time donations. We'd like to see enough subscriptions come in to where we have a guaranteed income flow coming through that I can start hiring people to do what I was just describing, getting out there and live streaming these events. We're going to hear a lot of things about our elections here today, and let me tell you, it's an eye-opener. Consider yourself mind blown by the time this is through. And there's going to be a lot of doubters. There's going to be a lot of people saying this is all conspiracy theories. And, they're probably right. Their opinions matter too. And right now, these are theories. Nothing has ever made its way through the courts. The evidence is there. The problem is our court systems won't even allow a case to actually go and start the open process of disclosure and discovery to be able to dig into what will be shown here today. And so we're going to do our best to make sure that you guys get to hear this free, uncut, and uncensored. And the best way you can make sure as many Alaskans as possible get to hear this is to like and share this video. And that tells the different algorithms out there that people are interested in this, and then it gets shown to even more people and even more and more on top of that. And that's how we beat the system out there. And it is rigged. I take my views 4 years ago with a tenth of the followers that I have right now, and I would have tens of thousands of views on my videos. Now with thousands of followers that follow me on all the channels, we barely reach anybody. We're lucky if we got a video that can go to 1,000 views, and unless of course it's something mainstream media is that they're wanting, or social media is wanting to promote, then of course it goes viral. But if it's something like this, they're doing everything they can to censor what we're saying, what we're showing you, and the best way to defeat that is like and share, leave comments, and we're always happy to try to get back to you if they're relevant. And even if they're not relevant, still leave a comment. We would love to hear from you. It is always greatly appreciated. So again, take a moment right now, like and share this video. Go to our website, Politadick.com, click that support button, make a donation. Once again, supporters like you is what makes broadcasts like this possible. I do know that there is going to be at least one more time that I will see about trying to stream his talks while he is here in Alaska. He's here for 2 more days after tonight. And I know of one more that's going to be out there in the Big Lake Family Restaurant. And I was invited to come and do that one, but they just have no internet there. Out in that Big Lake area, you're lucky to get 1 bar on your cell phone, and internal internet is just not available. So I do not know if I'll be able to live stream that one. But with your support, I might be able to actually get dinner while I'm there and not just have to show up and be a wallflower. Got several things going on today. We got the Palmer Community Council is meeting in their chambers. Saw the Big Cabbage Radio come up earlier. I think the Palmer Borough is also today, and just need to get active. In Anchorage, you got the Anchorage School District is having their meetings, and if you're not showing up to these, you're not pushing the buttons on a daily basis and bringing what you want to have addressed as problem, then you are part of the problem. Get out there and be active. Looks like they're ready to go, so I'm going to shut up on my end and let the show begin. We'll see you all in a while.
You start when you think it's right, I'm in.
Well, thank you all for coming this evening. It is now a little bit past 7 o'clock, so we're going to get started. And to open us up, I'd like to invite Pastor Barry to give the invocation.
Father, we just thank you so much for this time. I pray that your presence would be here, that you would lead and guide, or that this would be done to great honor to your name and to right our country again. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Amen. Well, tonight we're here to meet, if you haven't already had a chance to, and get to listen to Dr. Douglas Frank. I had the opportunity to meet him for the first time back in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, a couple years. So every year we cross paths in one state or another. He is much more traveled than I am. I'm mostly here in Alaska these days. Any day of the week, I'm not sure where he is because it's always someplace different. And if you saw his itinerary this week, I think he managed to visit Kenai and Juneau and Anchorage, and Wasilla and Big Lake are on the list later on this week. So he is working hard, and I am confident if you haven't already had a chance to meet him, you will enjoy getting a chance to do so as I have. And I will say, Dr. Frank is my favorite kind of person to introduce, because he is authentic and genuine, and you can see that when you meet him, as I did. And I remember back in 2021, just thinking, all right, how do we get Dr. Frank up to Alaska? And started planning that, and a couple years later, he's able to do it, and not just once, After he visits us this week, he will be coming back early part of next year as well. So he's not just here to make you feel good and give you a good speech and then you're not going to see him again. He's here for a very different purpose, which is much more long-term, which is going to be much more, well, there's going to be work from you involved in that, frankly. And without that, there's not going to be a solution to what we're up against. Now, you should know that Dr. Frank is not being paid by anyone to be here tonight. He had to step away from his livelihood to go state to state, and county to county, and city to city, talking about what we're up against, talking about what reality is. There's a lot of myths, there's a lot of falsehoods and misdirection, and Dr. Frank has set aside his time and a lot of his energy to be able to help us see through some of that. So without further ado, Dr. Frank.
Thank you, brother. I am very glad to be with you here. This is my first trip to Alaska, and my host the other day was calling it the icebreaker tour. And it's true in more than one way, right? And people, what are you doing going up there this time of year? This is the perfect time of year to come here for you guys, because what else are you doing? Okay, if it was the summer, then you'd have a whole bunch of stuff to do, right? And I understand the Iditarod is like in March, and so that's going to be a big mess. So I'm coming right after that, I think. It's like the 3rd or the 4th week in March I want to be back. And I'm just going to tell you, I've been doing this now for 3 years, almost every day. I sleep 3 nights a month in my home in Ohio with my wife and children, and my kids are grown mostly. So I'm on the road pretty much solid because this is a war, and I see this as my tour of duty. I didn't serve in the military, and so this is my time to serve my country. And so I think it's a light tour of duty compared to what a lot of our guys have had to do. So, I get to sleep in hotels and see my wife every few weeks. That's pretty good. It's a lot of military people don't have that luxury. So I'm not complaining a bit, and I'm delighted to be with you. I'll just tell you as kind of as an introduction, I came here and I didn't really know what to expect. I'm a learner. I'm a scientist. I'll show you a little bit of that. When I come into an area, I try not to be the smarty pants. I try not to come in and tell you what you should do. Even though I've been in 800 counties doing this, I have a pretty good idea what you need to do. But I was immediately shocked when I came to Alaska, because I was reading your Constitution, and I couldn't find what I needed to find in your Constitution, and I kept looking and looking and looking. So finally I just asked somebody, I said, who are your constitutional officers in your state? And they said, what do you mean by constitutional officers? They didn't even know what the meaning of my question was. Well, come to find out, you don't have any. Okay? What most states have is like a state divided into counties. You have boroughs, but I don't care what they're called. They're your divisions. And then there's a sheriff elected for that county. And the job of that sheriff is to defend your constitutional rights. And that sheriff has constitutional authority. So, for example, recently in New Mexico, the governor said, oh, this is horrible what's happening with school shootings and violence. We're going to put a temporary emergency ban on handguns, open carry, in our state. And so 70 of the sheriffs said, she could say what she wants, but I'm not enforcing that in my county. In other words, they're the constitutional officer that interposes, the technical term, interposes between the tyranny of government and the citizens. They have more authority in their county than the governor has, more than the president has. They can send the feds out. If a president visits town, they can arrest him. The sheriff has more authority than anybody else in that county, and they swear an oath when they take office that they will defend the constitutional rights of their citizens. You don't have that. So anytime your state has a whim to do X or Y or Z, there's nobody who immediately steps in between and says, not in my borough. You see where I'm going? So you're left in an interesting situation. The situation is, Who protects your constitutional rights? You. It's got to be you. In a lot of counties that I work in, we find voter fraud, and I'll explain why that's important a little bit, which is disenfranchising their citizens from their constitutional rights, which then they can say, well, then, Mr. Sheriff, defend us, and we organize a movement around that. But we're not going to be able to do that here because you don't have somebody like that. Instead, you're going to have to do something different. Let me give an example. When Antifa comes to town, what are you supposed to do? Call the police? No. When Antifa comes to town, you grab your rifle, you call your neighbors, you meet Antifa in the street. And my favorite example of this is in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, where they did this. And they called it Gun Delane. And the Antifa vans drove up, and the leader of the Coeur d'Alene group met the leader coming off the Antifa van. And he said, by the way, we love the First Amendment. We love freedom of speech. We're really looking forward to what you have to say. Please give us your demonstration, and we believe in freedom of speech. We'd love to hear what you have to say. But the first window that breaks, we open fire. Okay? And what happened was the Antifa guys got back in their van, and they went on to the next county, right? And that's what the Second Amendment is all about. It says you're supposed to have a well-regulated militia. The Second Amendment isn't the right to bear, it's the obligation to bear arms. It's your responsibility to defend your community. It's not the sheriff's responsibility, it's not the police's responsibility, it's your responsibility. That's the way the Constitution is written. We are the sovereigns. We are the government. We're supposed to be defending ourselves. And so here's the situation you're in your state. And it's not just you, it's across the whole country. People are like, well, gee, Dr. Frank, our elections are messed up. We got to call our legislator. Wrong! Your elections are messed up. You fix them. You're the government. Get busy, okay? And maybe if your legislators have 2 cents of brain power, they'll notice what you did to fix the problem, and they'll write legislation to copy what you did. And that's really what's supposed to be happening. Your legislatures aren't supposed to be sitting up there going, we need to plan this whole thing out. We need to plan our economy. That's socialism, right? You're supposed, and I'm in Alaska. You guys are like self-reliant, robust pioneers. You don't need anybody telling you what to do, okay, right? That's what you're supposed to be. So the problem is this has been going on for decades, and I think you've been kind of lulled into this comfortable place where you rely on other people to take care of business for you. So I want to change the way you think. I want you to take responsibility for your election debacle. And believe me, it's a debacle in your state, okay? And I don't want you to look to David Eastman to fix the problem, because I'm telling you right now, he's not going to be able to do it unless you fix it first. Then he'll be able to follow suit, and he'll be able to say, look at my constituents, look what they've done. Isn't this brilliant? We've set the example for the state. And by the way, once you do that, then other boroughs, and by the way, if I slip and say counties, you know I know the difference, okay? All right, I know that you have boroughs, but I'm in counties most of the time. So if I slip, forgive me. I know, don't correct me. All right, I get it. All right, so anyway, they have parishes in Louisiana, so whenever I'm there, I have to remember parishes, and you can see, but I know you have boroughs. So when the other boroughs see you, they'll copy you. So the first thing I did when I came into the state is I said, where is my beachhead county going to be? What do I mean by beachhead county? I want to know, where can I start the war in this state? The valley. And as I went to Juneau first, I was there for 2 days, and then I was at Fairbanks next, and then I was in Kenai, and then I was just in Homer, and now I'm with you guys. And every place I go, I've been asking, where should I go? Where's my beachhead in this state? And everybody says, the valley. That's what I said. This is where the beachhead is. So I'm not just here to give you a good talk and then disappear. I'm recruiting an army right now, okay? And this is a war, make no mistake. This is a war, and you are fighting not just for your own liberty, you're fighting for the liberty of your whole state, and you're fighting for the liberty of the whole country, okay? The entire country. And I've got beachhead counties in other states around the country that have flipped. When I say flipped, that means that they've gone back all to paper elections. And there's more to that than just paper ballots. There's more to that. I'll explain that as we go. And those counties are like lighthouses around the country, and other counties are inspired by that. So if we could get your whole state to flip, and this might be just the right place for that, then maybe we can get other states to flip. And maybe you guys are some of the most self-reliant people in the country, so I might just be able to convince you to step up and be the beachhead state. Maybe. I don't know. You guys are pretty bad shape up here. So we'll see, okay? But anyway, that's kind of where I'm coming from. All right, I just jumped right in there, didn't I? I had fun kind of running with that one. I got some momentum going. All right, I did a podcast with this guy, Joe Miller. Do you know who he is? Yeah. Okay. Anybody hear it? Was it any good? Excellent. And then today I did a radio program with the guy down in Homer. Did anybody hear that one? No. Okay, I'll post that link on my social media. Did you guys see my, I'm just kind of getting the busy work out of the way here. Did you see this? This is how you can follow the work I'm doing. If you want to take a picture of that, I don't have a web page. I've tried to have web pages multiple times, but I have too many enemies, and they launched denial of service attacks against my pages. It's too much work, so I gave up. So what I do is I just post on social media, and I try to post every day. Pick your favorite flavor, and you can follow me that way. And that's how you can kind of track what I'm doing. I'll just wait a second. Everybody got that picture? I'll move on when you're ready. By the way, that's my email down here. Please email me if you have questions or want help or want connections. I'm happy to do that, and I have people that help me read my email, so because I have too many. Okay. Are we good? All right, moving on. All right, I tell you what, let's open with a story. And we're in church, so I'm going to open with a different story than I thought I was going to open. Didn't know I was going to be in a church tonight. I'm going to zoom down here. Here it is. I love this story. So I was in Wisconsin. I was talking to about 200 people. It was a tavern out in the country. It was like a tea party group. And I finished my 2-hour talk, or maybe it was 2.5 hours. And people were lining up in the aisle to like take selfies with me and ask me questions. And we mill around and talk, and that's fun. And this lovely elderly couple came up to me, and the lady said, "Dr. Frank, may we pray for you?" And I said, "Yes, please pray for me. I love it when people pray for me." And so she came up and she laid her hand on me, and her husband put his hand on me. And little did I know this lady was a prayer. And she starts whooping up a prayer, and she's not messing around. And she's getting louder and louder and louder. And as she's working up this prayer, it's in a tavern, right? It echoes around the tavern. And so as she's getting louder, the volume comes down in the tower. And pretty soon, everybody's listening to this prayer. And a lot of them are joining in. It's like we're having a revival meeting right here. This is a really good moment, right? And she's really working it up. And she's got a real good lather going. It was a fun prayer. And she says, "Hey, thank you, Lord, for giving us Dr. Frank, and that he's fighting for election integrity against the evil Goliath of an election fraud. And Lord, we just thank you for giving him such a big slingshot to fight Goliath with. And Lord, we just pray that you give him some really big stones." She just kept right on praying, right? She didn't realize what she said. But we're in a tavern, okay? And so everybody's going, we're all laughing, right? Okay, that's the situation we're in. And so she finishes her prayer up, and when she opens her eyes, in Jesus' name, amen, she opens her eyes, and everybody's got a funny look on her face because we're all trying to not laugh, right? We're trying not to laugh. And so she looks kind of bewildered, and so I just leaned over. I said, "You just asked God to give me really big stones." And the whole place just roared out in laughter, and she's like, "Oh, oh!" And she turned beet red. Oh, it was the sweetest, most innocent, wonderful moment. But I love the story because as I was driving home afterwards, we were driving to the lodge where I was staying, I was thinking about it, and I realized she's exactly right. We need to have some really big stones. This is the time. And I was thinking about this situation. When David went to the battlefield, he did not go there to fight Goliath. He went there to bring his brother's lunch. And he shows up at the battlefield, and there's this big oaf out there insulting their God, insulting their nation. And he goes up to his 3 brothers, and he says, what's going on here? Get out there and take care of business. What did they tell him? Go back to the sheep. Go back to the sheep. Who are you to tell us? You go back to the sheep. But he didn't listen to his brothers. Instead, he went out and he recognized the situation for what it was. And he said to Goliath, this is not a battle between you and me. This battle is the Lord's battle. And today, the Lord is going to deliver you into my hands. Okay? The little shepherd boy doing that. Maybe he wasn't little. I don't know how big he was. But anyways, a shepherd boy. And sure enough, God performed a miracle and allowed David to slay Goliath. And here's my favorite part of the story. After he slew Goliath, then the children of Israel chased the Philistines out of the land. Okay? So if you think about this situation, the problem wasn't Goliath. The problem was the children of Israel were hiding in the hills. And what did it take? It took a little shepherd boy, maybe not little, but it took a shepherd boy to recognize the situation and to make a stand and to say, this is a battle between good and evil. And you're evil, therefore God is going to take care of business today, right? And that's what I need you all to be. I need you to not be hiding in the hills. Now is the time, and I see some gorgeous families here. I got 3 kids myself. I'm not necessarily just fighting for them, but we are fighting for them, and we are fighting for their futures. I'm also fighting for the country that God made. We made a covenant with God. This country is based upon that. That's what I'm fighting for. I want that back. So anyway, I just love this. I love this metaphor. It was a wonderful opening story, but also it tells us what the real problem is. But the real problem is we've been hiding in the hills. It's time for us to make a stand. It's time for us to find our stones. So start collecting stones and let's get ready. And that's what we're all about. And I know it seems insurmountable. I can imagine watching David walking out to fight Goliath. I can just see his brothers up in the hill. Well, this is going to be short. I can just imagine, right? And even Goliath was mocking. You send me the dogs to fight with him. Remember, I know it feels that way. Your state feels big and powerful and insurmountable. Well, but the nice thing is, the battle is the Lord's. You know you're on the right side because they want to castrate your children. They don't know the difference between an innie and an outie. They want to take away your money. They want to take away your liberty. And all those things are gifts from God. So we know we're on the right side. We know that that this is a battle between good and evil. And so we know we're on the right side. So we know that this is God's battle. So this is God's time. He just needs us to stand. And if we'll stand and fight, he'll win the battle for us. So I know it seems insurmountable. That's just a good, fun way to open this up. All right, let's see. What can I tell you now? All right, how did I get in? Let's see. I'm going to back up. Let's do this right here. I've been going around the country teaching everybody about election fraud. So as I've been traveling around, every time I do something, the media does something in reply. And last year, the NPR did a hit piece on a few of us that are doing this. I understand you had David Clements here. Okay, so it's not just me. Mike Lindell, me, David Clements, Seth Cashel, we've been traveling around the country. And about mid-year last year, NPR put this out and they noticed that I had done about 150 events that year. Well, actually, I did about 300 total for the year last year. I'm out there just about every day doing this kind of thing. In the evenings, I do an event like this. And during the days, I meet and work with the grassroots teams and coach them and give them data and tell them and give them coaching and whatnot. But it was interesting because we've been very busy, but I earned, the reason I'm doing that is because I learned early on, I thought I could do this by Zoom, but it doesn't work. You have to be in person. You have to be working with the teams. And if you think about the most successful movement in the history of the world, Christianity, Jesus didn't send emails, okay? He went town to town to town to town, and that's what, early on, and kind of my philosophy on this is best practices. I do what works. If it's not working, I change my strategy, okay? And I've just kind of naturally converged on this strategy because it's working. And then someday I look and I say, well, that was Jesus' strategy. Gee, I just should have thought of that at the beginning, just follow the example. It's a good example. So anyway, that's what I'm doing. I'm going town to town to town, and it makes me feel like a leaf on a river sometimes. People say, where are you going to be tomorrow? I said, I don't know. I have to look at my calendar because I have schedulers that do all my scheduling for me. It's just too big of a job. But it makes me feel like a leaf on a river. Wherever the river's going, that's where I'm going. I'm out of control of my life. And the thing about it is, that is not the way I've lived the rest of my life. The rest of my life, I'm a scientist, I'm an engineer, I'm a businessman. I make proposals, I deliver products, I have scientific method, I plan experiments, I execute. Everything is logical, there's a deliverable. I don't do anything that isn't planned out several steps ahead. So this has been very unusual for me. I wake up every morning, I look at the ceiling, I don't know where I am. I'm confused. And I use that moment of confusion to say, okay, God, whatever you have in store for me today, I'm there. And the amazing thing is I'm always in the right place at the right time. Watch the national news. Every time something comes up about elections, I was probably there the week before, okay? I seem to be in the right place at the right time. God is using me in a mighty way, and I'm just so honored to do that. I tell people I'm 6'1", I had nothing to do with it. And God's given me other gifts, I had nothing to do with it. I'm just using the gifts He's given me. So it's an exciting, if you let God do the planning for you, He's outside of space and time, so He can do some pretty good arranging. So I like that. But anyway, I got the nickname Johnny Appleseed because I'm traveling. They call me the Johnny Appleseed of election integrity because I'm going around the country working on this. And Sean Smith called me that. And it made me look up John Chapman because I hadn't thought about Johnny Appleseed since I was a little kid. So I looked him up and I found this YouTube video of Johnny Appleseed singing the Johnny Appleseed song. How many of you remember the Johnny Appleseed song? Do you remember it? The Lord is good to me. Sing it with me. And so I thank the Lord for giving me the things I need, the sun and rain and an apple seed. He's been good to me. Remember that song? Remember the Johnny Appleseed song? I see the smiles on your face. Some of you remember it. So I looked it up and I saw this YouTube video and my jaw fell open. That was Disney. Was Disney. Can you imagine Disney making that today? There is no way Disney would make that movie today. And that's only 50 years ago. That was our country 50 years ago. Okay? That is not our country today. Look how short of a time we have changed from having a decent, virtuous, somewhat virtuous culture at least, to this situation we're in right now. Who was in charge during that time? I was. But I was in the lab, playing golf, raising kids, making money. I voted every year. I did my civic duty. Yeah, right. No, that's just the beginning. So some of us, as I look around, you younger kids, you get a get out of jail free card. But all of us adults, we were the ones on duty when this happened to our country. And we're the ones who have to fix it. These younger kids, they don't have a clue what they've lost. Think about it. My kids, 21 and 23 and 26, my oldest daughter Nellie has Down syndrome. She doesn't know politics anyway. But my 23 and 21-year-old son, they're smart. They believe me. They know what I'm saying is true. But they have no idea what they've lost. They grew up in the age of Obama. Think about that. So there's no, I've learned, Turning Point's had me at a couple of events. I speak to young people. They don't get it. They don't realize what they've lost. They don't understand it. So it's going to have to be you guys. It's going to have to be our age, 40 plus. We know what we've lost. So it's on us, guys. So anyway, that's kind of, I'm calling on you a little bit. So I'm telling this story because all my stories are intended, I'm taking you through a narrative here. When I first started doing this work around the country, I got an invitation from California. And I started going out there, and my colleagues, who also in election integrity said, stop going to California, Dr. Frank. We need you in Michigan. We need you in Arizona. We need you in Georgia. We need you in these swing states. California's a lost cause. Stop going there. And so, I got an invitation, so I went. And lo and behold, what did I find? I found a state under Marxism. They're already communists there. But because they're already under Marxism and communism, there's all these political reactionary groups all over the state. And all I had to do is connect up with them. I aim them in the right direction. I'm having more success in California than anywhere else in the country, except maybe Wisconsin. Why? Because those people are awake. They're awake. I was just in Lexington, Massachusetts recently, and I spoke in a college auditorium. It was 3 big sections kind of going up. And this entire section over here was composed of Chinese people. It was the strangest audience. So I went up to one of them afterwards. I said, how come all these Chinese people here? And they said, we're all immigrants from China. We moved here to escape communism. And we're all on fire here. Why? Because the same things are happening to you here that happened to us back there, and you're all asleep. And so they're activated. We're the frog in the pot. We're sitting here going along, being happy, hunting bears and fishing for salmon. Okay, and then in the meantime, we're losing our country right in front of our face. So we got to wake up, don't we? We got to wake up. In California, at least, they're awake, a lot more awake than some of the other states. I'll show you in a minute. So it's interesting, the Los Angeles Times picked up on it, what I'm doing. I've been now in over 60 counties there. And just to give you one example, we have a county there in Northern California called Shasta County. They have about 75,000 voters, and they've flipped, I call it. What do I mean by flipped? They've disconnected their system from the state system. They have all paper poll books, all paper ballots that they hand mark, hand counting their ballots, hand tallying their ballots, and hand reporting their ballots. In other words, they're in control of the whole process. Anything electronic gives away control to somebody else. Why is that true? I build electronics for a living. If you come to my lab in Ohio, you'll see I've got an extensive electronics laboratory. That's how I pay the bills, okay? I don't trust electronics. How come? I build them for a living, okay? I know. And I was just in Texas recently, and they had this road show. It was called the ballot counting roadshow. They were going around showing how they've got this new system that can't be hacked and blah, blah, blah. Somebody was peddling around the state, and they asked me to speak at one of their events. They thought that I would be able to promote their new, better method of counting. And within 30 minutes, I had hacked their system, okay? It's a bad idea to have anything electronic in your elections. Do not have anything electronic in your systems. I've been doing consulting for decades with leading corporations in the world, and a lot of times they'll say, we want you to do this, we want you to do this, and I'll be designing a device for them, or custom. I like building custom machines, electron microscopes, laser scanners, all sorts of fun stuff. I love doing that. And I remember one time I was, where was I? I was at 3M. And I had like 20 engineers in this room, and we were designing a machine, and I had a whiteboard, and we were designing this proposal I was going to do with them. And can it do this? Can it do that? And I'm saying yes, 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 yes. And okay, how much is it going to cost, Dr. Frank? And I remember saying, it's probably about a year, $2.5 million, something like that. And they're like, whoa, 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 whoa. We need it to be like 6 months, and we want it to be like $500,000. I said, well, let's start crossing stuff off, Okay, we'll bring it back into reality. And they were like, but we wanted to do that, and we wanted to do that. And I said, I could build you a robot to walk your dog, but the right tool to walk your dog is your hands and your feet and a leash. We could build you a fancy machine, but there are going to be a lot of problems with it, okay? And this machine we're designing, some of these tasks you need to do with your hands and your feet, okay? And that's what I'm going to tell you about your elections. You need to use your hands. You need to count the ballots with your hands and your eyes. We don't need any fancy equipment. And you need to run your elections with your feet. You need to walk to the polling place and show your ID and be given a ballot and vote in person. That is how you need to vote. And I know that might be a little bit of a challenge in Alaska because I'm looking at the weather. But there's tons of ways around it. Like we did it for 200 years. You just have local precincts right around the corner and you count your own ballots and turn the numbers in. How hard is that? That's what we need to get back to. So anyway, that's kind of where I'm going. And my objective for you is to get you to that point. And you might be the first in the state, but you better get going because they're pretty excited over there in Juneau. And they're pretty excited over there in Fairbanks, but they did admit you guys have a head start on them now. So let's see if we can get you guys to flip first. Okay, I should tell you I'm a scientist. I'm a real scientist. I have 60 scientific publications, cover articles on the leading journals in the world. I made a major scientific discovery in 1990. It made me world famous, which is pretty cool. I got cover articles on the leading journals. And the best thing about it is it gave me notoriety and credibility. And so businesses began hiring me for consulting agreements. And so I left academics in 1996 because it was too toxic of an environment. I just couldn't stand to be in academics anymore. And that's a whole story. But went into business for myself. And I can tell you about some of the cool projects I've done. But I don't want to do that. I just want you to know I'm a real scientist, okay? If you read the media, they'll say, oh, that crackpot math teacher from Ohio, you know? They never mention the fact that I was nominated for Nobel Prize in 1990 in chemistry. They never mention that stuff, or that I teach super high IQ kids or anything like that. No, I'm that crackpot math teacher from Ohio. That's who I am. So anyway, I'm also a terrorist. Let's see, and let me change this order. How did I get into this mess? Let me tell you this story. So, do you remember in November of 2020, Doug Mastriano held a public hearing, and it was nationally televised, and he had people showing a whole bunch of evidence of election fraud in Pennsylvania. Well, the very next day, I got a phone call from Kathy Barnett. She's from Montgomery County, one of the most corrupt counties in the state of Pennsylvania. And she was saying, Dr. Frank, would you help me with my election? Something's wrong with my election. Everybody tells me I should have won, but there's something wrong. Would you look at my numbers? So I knew her because we'd been doing some work during COVID together. So she mailed me the data, and I analyzed it. Within about 2 or 3 hours, I'd found all kinds of serious anomalies in her election. And so she introduced me to her legislators who were doing an investigation. They were leading an investigation. And I showed them my results, and they were like, whoa, you have some really important things. And they put me on their team. So I was part of a team of 6 investigators at the wish of the all volunteer, at the wish of the legislature. But I got access to anything I asked for. I had subpoena power through the legislature. You understand? It's like, oh, everybody's excited about the Maricopa audit. No, they got denied a whole bunch of the stuff they needed in their audit. Here, I got everything I wanted. So I don't want to talk about Pennsylvania, but I want to give you 2 examples. First example is, I didn't do this part, but the team did this. They went around county by county, and they added up from the poll books how many signatures and how many ballots were received, and how many voters had voted in every county in the state. They added that up in one column, and then they added up all the ballots that had been tallied in all those counties, and they noticed that they had 765,000 more ballots that they tallied than they had people who voted. 765,000 more ballots tallied than they had people who voted. Okay, now there's a state law in Pennsylvania that says, I'm not kidding, you shall not certify any election that has more ballots than voters. Okay, it's right in state law. It's that simple, okay? And so when Secretary Bookvar went to the floor of the legislature to ask for certification, that one of the legislators raised his hand and he said, excuse me, Madam Bookvar, Madam Secretary, we're not allowed to certify this election. Why not? Because it says right here in state law that we shall not certify any election that has more ballots than voters. And we have 765,000 more ballots than voters. And she says, oh, don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. Because it's just COVID. And what's happening is all of our counties are behind in their reporting. When everything comes in, it'll all reconcile. Don't worry about it, okay? So they went ahead and believed her, and they went ahead and and certified the election, even though that's illegal. They did that. This is all a matter of public record. You can go check me if you don't believe me. And it never reconciled. They always had tens and tens of thousands more ballots than they had voters. So that's an illegal election. Now, how come that isn't being covered on the media all over the country? Okay, because you're listening to the wrong media. Because if you've been listening to the Lindell Report at 6 o'clock Central Time, weekdays, you would have heard about that because we were telling everybody that. And there's so many things like this. The media is complicit with this. They are suppressing, not only do they say bad things about me, but they're suppressing what I say. So that's an example. Okay, that's one example. But this is what I want to tell you this story for another reason. This is where I first learned some interesting things. I am like an expert at voter rolls now. I have the voter rolls and who voted in every state in the country now, right here. Right here on my computer, and I can compare states, and I've studied the voter rolls, and I've learned, and I have yours too. And I'll give you copies of your voter rolls and help you with it. And I was studying the voter rolls in Pennsylvania, and I noticed that in the months leading up to the election in Pennsylvania in 2020, suddenly 50,000 people were added to the voter rolls in Montgomery County. That was my specialty. Montgomery County, if you'll recall, was the one where they had 4 Supreme Court cases from Montgomery County to the Supreme Court in Pennsylvania. So that was my focus, and I was in 2 of those 4 cases. I was studying the voter rolls. 50,000 people were suddenly added to the voter rolls all in one day, and I thought that was kind of strange. But I figured there might be a reason for it, and maybe the clerks all added them on one day. I don't know. People register before elections. So that was not suspicious in by itself. And all those people voted, and that's not suspicious in itself because, of course, people that register before an election are likely to vote in that election. But then I noticed that 25,000 of those 50,000 were removed from the voter rolls after the election. And then by the end of December, all 50,000 had finally been removed. So understand, before the election, 50,000 new people were added, they all voted, and then within 2 months they were all taken out. And I was confused by that. I didn't understand what's going on. I'm confused. So I asked Secretary Bookvar, because I have subpoena power, why are you removing these voters from the rolls? And she answered by email that very afternoon. It said, because they moved away. Okay, that surprised me. I didn't expect that answer. But because I have a copy of the rolls, I know the names and addresses, voting history, birth date, all this information about each of those 50,000 voters. So I went and started looking them up. And she was right. Every one I looked up had moved away 10 years before. So understand what happened. People who had previously been in the voter rolls in Pennsylvania and removed because they died or moved away or something were reactivated and re-put back into the rolls. Somebody stuffed 50,000 ballots for those, and then the automatic cleaning up routines of their state that removed people who moved away using the post office records had cleaned them off within 2 months. So now the obvious question is who did that? Who did that? So we got copies of the logs, the computer logs for the computer system, the maintenance system for the state. See why having access to everything is so important? Okay, you didn't get to do that in Maricopa. We got to do that in Pennsylvania. So we looked back through the logs and we noticed on one Tuesday afternoon, about 1:30 in the afternoon, those 50,000 people were all added with 4 entries in the logs. And so the question is, who is that? Now, if I do cybercrime, you don't know it's me. You just know my computer is on the internet. So cybercrime, you don't know who's actually on the other side of the keyboard, but you do know who the login credentials are. And you can find, did you have a question? No, you're just with me. Yeah, exactly. We just know the computer. So what we noticed is the login credentials were the Hillary Clinton campaign. Wow. And that surprised me. This is 2020. What is Hillary Clinton campaign doing in the 2020 rolls in Pennsylvania? I'm confused. So I went to Russ Diamond and I said, would you explain this to me? I don't understand. And he said, oh yeah, I know what that is. And he sent me a newspaper clipping from 2015 that announced the fact that the Pennsylvania legislature hired the Hillary Clinton campaign to write an app that works on your phones and tablets so that people could go out and register people to vote at football games and in college dorms and rock concerts and stuff like this. So they had actually hired the Hillary Clinton campaign to do this, and those credentials were still active. Okay, so that's interesting. Well, then the question is, well, who else has access to the voter rolls? And so we put together a team, and they went through about 2 months of scanning through the rolls. And guess what we found? 32 non-government organizations, NGOs we call those, had access to the voter rolls. The number one manipulator was the Hillary Clinton campaign. The number two manipulator was CTCL, the Center for Tech and Civic Life. Anybody know what that is? Zuckerberg, the Zuckerbucks. So the number two manipulator in their rolls was that. And the third manipulator was Rock the Vote, and that was only down, that was under 10%. And then the last one, there were 32, but like significant ones, was Antifa. The fourth most was Antifa. And it's like, what are these NGOs doing with access to your voter rolls? And by the way, your rolls are being manipulated, right? So we showed this to these guys, and okay, so put yourself in my place. You're a scientist. You believe in truth and logic and evidence, and when you have that, you show it to people, and they agree with you because they all agreed, yeah, that's horrible. Because the evidence is there, you can't argue. What do I expect to happen? I'm expecting, this is in December of 2020, like 6 weeks after the election, I'm expecting them to go, oh no! Our elections got corrupted. Oh no, this is horrible. We have to decertify this election. We have to do a do-over because this thing's all corrupted. Forgive me for being a rube, okay? For being naive, right? Because I'm a scientist. I think logically like that. What they did do is they said, oh no, that part was right. We got to throw away the voter rolls.
Whoa.
That surprised me. But it kind of made a little sense because, okay, their voter rolls are corrupt, so they're going to throw away the voter rolls. And they sent out a request for proposal to a bunch of businesses in Pennsylvania. We need our voter rolls rebuilt and reassembled in time for our spring election because these voter rolls are corrupted. And they awarded a contract to a Pennsylvania company for about $10 million. And I think that was on December 20th. And then 3 days later, that firm was bought by Zuckerberg. Then I went, what? What? Because when I first found out they'd thread the voter rolls, I was a little confused. I'm not a politician. I don't understand. They know what they're doing, but I'm confused. When that happened, I said, whoa. They just put the fox right back in the hen house. The guys who were manipulating the rolls, you just put in charge of the new rolls. By the way, I went back and checked the voter rolls in the spring. They were the same voter rolls as before. They didn't change nothing. They just did a payoff and a cover-up. That's what they did. Anyway, long story. I think I've told you enough about Pennsylvania. But it also tells you when I woke up, because I realized, wait a minute, these people are just going to cover this up. They're not going to fix this problem. And I was also confused on another score, because they're a majority Republican. And I thought, like, Republicans are good. Democrats are bad. Right? Republicans are good. I showed these Republicans. They're going to fix the problem. They're a Republican majority. So forgive me once again for being a rube, okay? And so I went to Florida next. I downloaded the rolls right away because I was looking for clean elections, not fraudulent elections. I found almost as much fraud in that election as we found later in California. I went up to North Carolina next. Why was I picking these states? Because they were all red states where I thought we might be able to have clean elections. And I'm a scientist. I was looking for controls so I could refine my algorithms. And I couldn't find any clean elections anywhere. And those states had data that I could immediately download and analyze. And I was frustrated. I couldn't find anything. Well, anyway, Kathy Barnett called me late February. She says, I give up, Dr. Frank. The Supreme Court's rejected the case. The legislature's not going to fix this. Stop volunteering for me. I give up. They're not going to fix the election. She said, but interestingly, she says, last week I met Mike Lindell. I met him at some big conservative national meeting. And I have his phone number here. I'll introduce you to him. So she called Mike Lindell, and we set up an interview. And the following week, I got a phone call from Mike's attorney. And he said, he set up a meeting. I got to give a lecture to 16 16 attorneys. You've heard all their names. Rudy Giuliani, Sidney Palley, all those guys. 16 attorneys. And here it is. Here it goes. I'm resuming now where I left off before. And he said, we need you in studio on Monday morning. Can you make it, Dr. Frank? He said, yeah. So I went down and Mr. Lindell filmed a movie about me. It's called Scientific Proof. It's 1 hour long. And it's basically me summarizing how I can go into any state and predict everything that's happening. Why? Because it all follows algorithms, and I figured out what the algorithms were. I can go into any state, analyze one county, and tell you in every other county in that state how many 18-year-olds voted, how many 19-year-olds voted, how many 20-year-olds voted. I can tell you of every age. How could I do that? Because it ain't natural. It ain't natural, buddy. What I found is I can predict it everywhere. Study one county in the state, I can predict the rest. And so Mike was very impressed by that, and he was all excited. And about halfway through the interview, he goes, all my electronic evidence and all your mathematical evidence, it exactly lines up. And he did this thing with his fingers. I thought that was really cool. And he's right. So if you haven't seen that movie, that's fun. That was about 3.5 hours of filming with Mike Lindell. And if you know Mike Lindell, that's a lot of time with Mike Lindell. He's a charming, lovely man, but I never met anybody that could talk more than me until I met Mike Lindell. And so by the end of that 3.5 hours, I was exhausted, okay? And I was showing him graph after graph, and I just got tired of explaining it. And so at one point I just said, Mike, see this graph, see this graph? That ain't natural, buddy. And that's what I'm going to do to you tonight. I'm not going to show you any fancy math. I'm going to show you some math, but I'm going to keep it really simple. And at one point you're going to go, that ain't natural, buddy, and we're going to move on, okay? So anyway, that's what's going on. So we did that movie together, and then after that I was famous. Suddenly 10 million people knew who I was like a week later. I have not done anything since except this almost every day of my life. I'm working hard. I get up every morning and I work on election integrity every day, and I'm always behind because there's so many battlefronts around the country. But I'm just so excited to be in this battle. But anyway, so President Trump asked me to be his keynote speaker for his first rally after he was out of office. And it was in Wellington, Ohio on a Saturday. And because I'm going to be speaking to the whole world, he asked me, explain to the world how our elections are being stolen. So I worked really hard. I prepared a really good presentation because the whole world's going to be watching me, of course. And I remember walking up to the microphone and staring out over a sea of 21,000 people that had been standing in the sun for 6 hours on a Saturday afternoon, drinking beer and listening to rock and roll all day at a Trump rally, which are rowdy, and thinking to myself, I just wasted a week of my life because I'm going to try to teach these people math. But about halfway through my talk or so, I could tell every graph that would go up, I could just hear waves of ooh, ah. It was like the best math class of my life. It was awesome. And the next day they made memes about me. So I'll show you a little bit of math tonight, but I promise to keep it simple, okay? I promise to keep it simple. After that, that's when I first met David at the Cyber Symposium. I got to be the MC for this event. That's where Mike showed the world, basically. He has electronic recordings of your elections being hacked. Your elections being hacked in real time during the elections. He showed for all around the country. And then a year later, he did the Moment of Truth Summit. And David was at that one again. And I got to be a part of the trial of the machines. Your machines are important to the steal, but they're not the only thing. The rolls are actually more important than the machines. The machines are just complicit. And by the time we're done here, I'll help you understand that. And then he just did this last event here in August called the Election Crime Bureau Summit. And I remember as I was sitting, I got to do 2 of the sessions. In the morning, I did a combined session with Mike. And about halfway through, he looked over at me and says, Dr. Frank, I hardly know you. You've got all new work. What do you think I've been doing for 3 years, okay? I mean, it's not the same stuff I showed him at the beginning, but it's fun. It was a good meeting, so that was in that morning. If you haven't seen those things, this is how to follow and go back and watch them. It's on lindelltv.com or frankspeech.com. And Mike pays for all that out of his own resources. And I just have to tell you, when I first met him, he told me, he says, I got about $40 million in the bank in my own personal wealth. He says, I'm going to spend it all on this effort. And he says, I either spend it now or they're going to take it away from you later anyway. That's what he said. And he announced at this event in August that he's broke. He spent all of his personal resources already. Now he's borrowing money for the fight. My Pillow's doing fine. My Pillow's generating business and he's getting an income from it, but he's personally busted. And he's borrowing money. So I asked him a couple weeks ago, I said, hey Mike, please buy his pillows, help him out, right? So I said, hey Mike, how can I help you? As I'm traveling the country, how can people help you? What do you want me to tell them to help you? And he says, tell everybody to go to mypillow.com and buy stuff. And he says, or go to Lindell Offense Fund and donate money. He says, I need all the money I can get. And he says, and tell everybody to use your promo code. And I said, Mike, I don't have a promo code. I'm not getting paid for any of this work, and I don't want anybody to think I am, so I don't use a promo code. He says, no, you don't understand. He says, I manage my business with promo codes. I want everybody to use your codes so I know where you are and what you're doing. And so I said, okay. So he sent up this promo code, and I've set up the promo code so that normally I would get a 25% cut of everything you buy. I've set it up so it all goes back to him. So actually my promo code is the best promo code to use because you're giving more money to Mike and it goes right back to him. And so, but it's turned out to be a fun game too, because as I'm traveling the country, I'll get a text from Mike and he'll say, oh, I see you were in Arizona yesterday. Because people go home and buy pillows and sheets and stuff, and he knows where I am all the time. So I'm looking forward to seeing him say, oh boy, you were in Alaska for 8 days. Yeah, I see that. Each place, so it's kind of a fun game. So I'm hoping at least a few of you will go on and do some Christmas shopping there. Use that code. You're helping him out that way too. And I promise you, he's the real deal. You're not wasting your money. This is how you know he's the real deal. I'm in a church, you should get that. I love that. All right, now let's get down to business. All right, I've told you some stories, but I've also done the prep work, so I think you're ready for this. So, yes, I did that. I can come back to that. Let's do this next. I think you're going to like this next. All right, here's the basic problem with our elections. The basic problem with our elections is summarized in this beautiful mosaic. This is in the Capitol building of Wisconsin. It's 100 years old. It's in the dome. It's magnificent. Janelle Branchin, she's on the legislative committee there for elections. She showed me this. It's a picture of Lady Liberty, and with one hand she's pointing towards heaven, because that's where our liberty comes from. That's where inspiration from God. And with her other hand, she's protecting the ballot box, because that's how we protect our liberty. And that's why we're losing our liberty, because we aren't protecting the ballot box anymore. We're letting other people work in our ballot boxes. That is, in a nutshell, what's wrong with our elections. We have to take back our ballot boxes. And I'm going to tell you, and I'm making a strong statement, in every state in America now, I know I've analyzed over 3,000 counties now and several boroughs. Our elections are centrally controlled. And I'm going to give you 2 examples so that you'll understand what I mean by centrally controlled. And then I'm going to show you Alaska. And you're going to see what I'm talking about. Are you ready? So here's Wisconsin. I've had the pleasure and opportunity and access to speak to 24 secretaries of states around the country, 24 AGs, and those aren't just like, let's do a selfie together and move on. No, these are like day-long marathons where we meet together and we go over their elections, and I hack into their elections right into their faces. These are serious meetings. But anyway, I got to have a 1.5-hour meeting with Speaker Voss, Robin Voss. He's the Speaker of the House of Wisconsin. A local citizen set it up, and it was me and Sean Smith. He's the guy who called me the Johnny Appleseed of election integrity. He's a retired colonel from the Air Force. He was in charge of cybersecurity and operational testing for the Air Force, and he retired in 2019 from the Pentagon. He's like big-time cyber guy. And then John Eastman, who is Trump's constitutional authority. And so here's what the plan was. Sean was going to show him how vulnerable the elections were electronically. I was going to summarize all the fraud we'd found in Wisconsin. And then John Eastman was going to say, now that you know that your elections are vulnerable, and Dr. Frank's showing you all the fraud you have, here are your constitutional responsibilities, here are your constitutional obligations, here are your constitutional powers. Get busy and fix the election. That's the plan, okay? So Sean did a great job, and then it was my turn, and I was about halfway through reviewing the fraud, and I was summarizing about 350,000 cases of fraud. It's so serious. These are not like casual cases, were documented cases. And at one point he says, Dr. Frank, he says, I just don't believe we have that much fraud in our state. I said, how can you say that? He said, well, he says, because we've done recounts in our 3 largest counties. I'm looking for something. Oh, I didn't leave it at my last venue. Oh my goodness, I might have left it at my last venue. Oh dear. We might need to get on the phone for my last venue. I might have left something there. That's okay, we'll find it. I have a little demonstration. That's all right, we'll figure it out. Okay, sorry I paused on that. I messed that up. Okay, I said, why do you think you have no fraud? He says, well, we've done recounts in our 3 largest counties. And in our 3 largest counties, the recounts all came out. Yeah, that's where my demonstration was. And I think I left it in my folder in Homer this morning. They rushed me out because I had to catch a plane. You know, one of those little prop jobs. That was pretty fun, especially coming down through the snow. Anyway, so I said, I said to him, sir, I said, you did recounts. I said, in recounts, it doesn't matter how many times you count the cash in the register. What matters is how many of the bills are counterfeit. And he kind of looked at me like, huh? It's like it didn't even dawn on him. And I got to tell you, as I meet legislators around the country, they don't know, they don't think about this stuff. You're a lieutenant governor who's in charge of elections. They're not lieutenant governor because they know about elections. They're lieutenant governor because they're climbing the political ladder looking for their next appointment. So I end up spending most of my time just teaching people about their own elections. So anyway, I explained, it doesn't matter how many times you count the cash in the register. What matters is how many of the bills are counterfeit. Well, it's the same with our elections. It doesn't matter how you count the ballots or how many. What matters is are they the real ballots from the real voters? How do you know? And that's the big problem. Well, anyway, at the end of that meeting, he stepped out of that. It was supposed to be a secret meeting, but there were 10 television stations waiting outside the room, and they cornered him against the wall, and they were peppered him with questions, and he admitted to the state, to the world, that there was more fraud in the state of Wisconsin. Widespread fraud, more than the margins in the elections. Did you hear that in the media? Are you getting my point? You're listening to the wrong meeting then, because that night, I was on the Lindell Report at 6 o'clock Central Time, and we were telling the whole nation what had happened that day. This is why you got to listen to this, because you want to know what's really going on, this is where you get it. And I know an hour is a long time to listen to Mike, but if you just get 10 minutes at the beginning, you'll know what's going on. I love Mike, so I can kid him. He and I both talk a lot, so you can rib me too if you want. Okay, but here's some of the data I showed him, and this is why you need to see this. This is simple explanation, and now I'm going to apply it to you in a minute. So I showed this to Speaker Boss, and I also testified before their legislature showing these data. What are these data? It's from November of 2009 to December of 2021, and I testified before their legislature on December 8th, 2021, and I showed them these data. I said, notice what happened right before the 2012 election. In your 3 largest counties, the voter rolls surged right before the election in 2012, and then after the election, you took them out. Does that sound familiar? Does that sound like my Pennsylvania example? And then right before the midterms, they surged again and you took them out. And then right before 2016, your voter rolls surged, filled right back up again. And then after the 2016 election, you removed 1/4 of your voters from the voter rolls. 1/4 of your voters. And then they're all back again in time for 2020, in time for the 2020 election. I said to him, sir, how do you explain this? He says, those counties, those 3 counties, he says, they have a lot of turnover. That's how I explain it. 25%, I'm glad you laughed. I was like, 25%? I said, besides, what about all of your counties? Every county. And when I published this graph in public, it sent shockwaves across the state of Wisconsin because they were being told, we can't have widespread fraud in our state because every county runs their own election. That ain't natural, buddy. Every county is growing and shrinking exactly. No, that's not natural. You know that's central control of their election, central control of their voter rolls. See where I'm going with this? Okay. Yes. So that's one example. Let me give you one more example and then we'll talk about you. So in Wyoming, I chose Wyoming because they're the most conservative in the entire country. They're the most conservative state. They voted 3-1 for Trump more than any other state, and 8 out of 9 people there are registered Republicans. So they're like the most conservative in the state. Let me show you that state. So here are their 3 largest counties. In this case, I just put it on an absolute scale first. So this is the number of registered voters in each of their 3 largest counties. What do you notice about that? They all follow the same pattern, huh? Well, what if I show you all the counties? All the counties follow the same pattern, yes? And if I put it on the same scale, a percent scale, kind of like in Wisconsin, you'll notice that every 2 years, they're changing 20 to 25%. Wisconsin took 4 years to change that. They're only changing every 2 years that much. They don't have that much turnover. 25% turnover every 2 years? I don't think so. You see what's going on? They're centrally controlled. When I showed this to their state and met with their clerks' jaws would fall open. This is my voter rolls? I would show county by county. They didn't even know this was happening to them. Do you know why? Because they don't control it. They've given over control to the state. You guys overtly state that. You overtly say, yes, the state is controlling our voter rolls. I've talked to 2 of your clerks now so far. One in Homer this morning, and the other day we talked with one in Juneau. No, it wasn't. I don't remember. I've talked to 2 of your clerks now. And they willingly admit it here, but other states don't even know. So when I show them, they're like, that's my state? That's my county? The clerks don't even know. It's amazing. So I want to show you something else while I'm on the topic of Wisconsin. I'm sorry, Wyoming. So last year, if you recall, the state of Wyoming had a big public movement, and they got all riled up, and they threw out Liz Cheney. Remember that? But you had your hand up. I'll come back to you. They threw out Liz Cheney. At the same time they did that, they put in a brand new Secretary of State, and his name is Chuck Gray, and he was elected on that he would do election integrity in the state. So think about it. You've elected a brand new Secretary of State. Well, the first thing that happened is the legislature of Wyoming said, we're going to take, the first bill they considered this year was to take away election authority from the Secretary of State. It would be like taking it away from your lieutenant governor. And we're going to set up an election commission, quote, like they have in the state of Wisconsin, unquote. In other words, the people elected a new official to clean up their elections, and the first thing that happens in the most conservative legislature in the country is, whoa, 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 not so fast. We're going to take away control. And that's a super important lesson. I have met with dozens of legislators, hundreds of legislators, dozens of legislatures. None of them want us to fix these elections. And it doesn't matter whether it's a red state or a blue state. They all, it's just the first rule of government. They've concentrated power centrally. Governments don't willingly give up central control of things. So that's what's happened in every single state in the country. Now let me just show you. This is the state of Wyoming. And I was talking with David earlier, I want to make one of these graphs for your state. That's just that I can pretty much predict what it's going to look like. So let me explain this one first, and then I'm going to make a prediction. Scientists, we like to make predictions. So what this is it's for this year's general session. They have a 40-day session. You have like a 90-day session or something like this. And what happens is, this is the most conservative person in their legislature, and this is the most liberal person in their legislature. And this is how they voted on all the different issues throughout their legislative session. They have 26 legislators, they call them the Freedom Caucus, who voted more consistently with their most conservative. This would be the David Eastman of your state. And then they have these are 26 Republicans in that Freedom Caucus, and they have 26 Republicans who voted like their most 6 liberal Democrats from the 6 big cities in the state of Wyoming. So I want you to think about something. Every single reform bill that they want to propose is divided. 26 against 26 plus 6. Do you think they're going to get any election reform legislation this year? Nope. So if you're waiting in those states for the legislature to fix the problem, you're going to be waiting a long time, yes? By the way, I'm going to make my prediction now. So this is my first time I've made this public prediction. So we'll see if I'm right or not. By the way, when scientists are wrong, that's not a bad thing. It just means you're going to learn something. Okay? All right? But let's see if I can predict. I predict that in your state, there'll be a big red dot over here. That'll be David Eastman. And then all these other dots, they'll all be up here in purple. Okay? You might have a straggler or two. But for the most part, it's going to be one big dot and a bunch of non-big dots. So you're in trouble in your state. If you're expecting your legislature to fix anything, you're going to be waiting a long time. So that's back to my introductory comments. It's going to be you. You're going to have to do this. You're not going to be able to say, oh, call your legislator, we have a problem. That's like saying call the police when the Antifa come to town. No, you have to fix the problem. So get it done. All right. I think I've shown you enough. Let's jump onto your state. By the way, there's so much I could show you. Okay, I do have to show you one more thing before I get to your numbers. All this stuff I'm doing, I'm preparing you so when you look at your numbers, you understand what's going on. So one of the things is I'm going to tell you that your voter rolls are dirty. In fact, they're the dirtiest in the country. You have the dirtiest voter rolls in the country. Okay, and in Wisconsin, for example, they go up and down and up and down and up and down. In Wyoming, you saw they went up and down and up and down and up and down. But there are some states that it doesn't go up and down and up and down and up, and it just keeps going up, 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 up. Okay, you're one of those. So accept it. Wait till I show your data. You do have some up and down interesting stuff too. Anyway, so here's Kentucky. It's a red state, right? This is from 2017 to present. And you'll notice that this blue line is their population of 18 and older people. That's not people who are eligible to vote. That's people who are 18 and older. That includes illegal aliens, felons, and legal aliens. So really, who's eligible to vote is probably lower than that. The blue line is lower, who's eligible to vote. Let's just zoom in on that a little bit. So that's the 18 and older population. And then here's the number of people that are in the voter rolls in Kentucky each year. And you notice that the voter rolls are growing faster than the population. You would expect when the population goes up, the voter rolls would go up. And you expect when the population go down, the voter rolls would go down. But instead, the voter rolls are climbing faster than the population. Every state in America, the voter rolls are growing faster than the population. I could go state to state and show you a graph like this for every state. Every single state in the country. In fact, in Kentucky, what happened is right before the 2020 election, whoop, we got another next little bump. They have more people in the voter rolls than they have people available to be in the voter rolls. And that puts them at about 105%. Okay, so that's obviously can't be rational, can't be reasonable. And actually it's worse than that because this blue line should be about 5% lower because on average that's about how many illegal aliens and things like that you have in states. So Judicial Watch noticed that right back here in 2019, and so Judicial Watch sued the state of Kentucky. And Kentucky was required to remove over 200,000, and that's a conservative estimate. It should have been twice that, but they had to remove about 200,000 people from the voter rolls. But then the ACLU turned right around and countersued them, and they had to put them all right back in again. So it was proven in court that these people were in the rolls illegally, yet they were put back into the rolls. So this is not me saying, oh, the rolls are dirty and illegal people are in it. No, it's proven in the court of law. They're not supposed to be in there and it's illegal. See where I'm going? Okay, so in this case, this example I'm giving you, notice that the rolls aren't going whoop, 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 up and down. They're just going chick, 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 and zoop, right past. And so they took people out, but they put the same people back in. All right, now, here's another example. This is from Los Angeles County in California. This is February of this year. Los Angeles Judicial Watch sued them they had to remove 1.2 million people. That's over 1 in 4 of their voters from their voter rolls that were in there illegally. Within 2 months, their voter rolls were full again, but not with the same voters that they took out, with new non-real voters in the voter rolls. So a lot of times you're going to hear people say, we need to clean our voter rolls. Are we hearing that call in your state? Nope. We need to clean our voter rolls. That's a waste of time. You know why it's a waste of time? Because you're not in control of your voter rolls. You need to get control of your voter rolls, then clean your voter rolls. You might put all your energy into cleaning up your voter rolls, and then Doug Frank tomorrow goes onto the computer, click, 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 I make them dirty again. The problem isn't that they're dirty. The problem is that they're out of your control. And by the way, this is a brilliant political strategy. Admit to the public that the voter rolls are dirty and get them all involved in cleaning up the voter rolls. That doesn't do diddly, except keep the public busy and believing that you're about election reform when you're not really about election reform. It gets everybody busy working but not doing anything. You see where I'm going? It's very good psyop, if you ask me. All right, let's see if we can get to you. How, of course, is all this possible? Of course, it's because of the machines, stupid. And what do I mean by machines? I mean, there's so many things. How you register voters, how you provide access to the voter rolls, how you record and report ballots. We could go on. I could give you a whole day lecture on this. I had to become an expert at this. And okay, I kind of like it because I like electronics. Okay, I've learned how all these systems work. Okay, and I tell you, it's complicated. But what I want you to do is I just want you to put that all out of your mind. I just want you to vote Amish. I want you to vote all paper, no machines. Every part of your election needs to be all paper. Now, when you say that to your county clerk, she's going to say, "Oh no, Dr. Frank, we can't have an all-paper election because federal law requires us to have machines for handicapped people." Have you heard that one? If you talk to your county clerk, they almost all of them always say that. And that's not true. Federal law doesn't say you have to have machines for handicapped people. Federal law says if you have machines, then you have to have machines for handicapped people. Understand? And then it says, and by the way, since HAVA 2002, if you'll pick one of these machines, we'll send you the money for it. And so basically what was happening is all around the country, the federal government was paying off our counties to install machines in our elections, which basically allows central control of our elections. Now, in this case, whenever I mention this, I always like to bring up Nellie, my 26-year-old gal. She has Down syndrome. She's one of the lights in my life. She's amazing. And she's really smart. She's very high functioning. And she watched me preparing to vote in the primary last year. And she looked over my shoulder and she says, "Oh, Daddy, I like Joe. I love Mark. I love these people." And she knows them because I've taken her to events with me. She's hugged these people. She knows who they are. So I thought, you know what? She could vote this time. So she wore her Vote Amish shirt, and we took her down, and the election was being held in this like elementary school gym. And she went into the voting booth, and it was not a private ballot. Because she walked in the booth, and she's like, "Oh, I love Joe! I love Mark!" You know, she was announcing to everybody how she was voting. And you look around the room, everybody was smiling, a big goofy grin, because there's a sweet little girl in there voting. Everybody knew it was a beautiful situation. That's the way we should all be voting, in person together in the polling place and enjoying and seeing each other every year. And that's what should be happening. But anyway, if she's handicapped, she doesn't need no machine. She does just fine. She fills in the bubbles. She loves filling in the bubbles. It's fun. Okay. All right. You get the point? We don't need them for handicapped people. What gave me the idea for voting Amish, though, was that in Ohio, in 2020, 60,000 Amish people came out to vote for the very first time. They came out because their government, like your government, was imposing severe COVID restrictions on their community. And so they said, no, we're not going to tolerate that. So 60,000 of them turned out on election day in person and voted on paper. That's what I call voting Amish. Turning out on election day in person, voting on paper. That's what you need to be doing, voting on. So that's where I got the idea. And if your clerk says, oh, that's not feasible, just a reminder that all of Europe does it that way. And machines have been illegal in Europe for decades. And it says right in their law, the reason that they're illegal is because they're hackable and not secure. Okay? And that's why they don't allow it. What do? They have paper poll books, paper ballots. Everything's transparent all day long. These people count the ballots at the end of the day, and they report the tally. That's what you need to do. And in one day, and all of Europe does it that way. Why can't we do it that way? We did do it that way for 200 years, by the way, and we were only 10% smaller. There's no reason we can't do this except that we've been duped. We've been told we have to do it this way because it's just not practical to do it the other way anymore. By the way, it's 10 times cheaper. We've run all the cost studies. It's 10 times cheaper to do it this way than it is with your fancy dancing machines, and it's way faster. And I skipped your question a minute ago, now that I see it. I didn't mean to skip you, buddy.
No, my question was, when you showed the surges and you asked what the issue was, and they said, well, they moved away.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure you could go into the state statistics and say, no, all these people didn't move away. I can show you right
You're
here.
right, exactly.
You always go up here and you can show that graph and say,
Yes.
yeah, they didn't move away that year.
You're correct, I could do that, and that's the sort of thing exactly that I do. And if you watch some of my testimony, that actually came up in my Kansas, when I testified before the Kansas legislature. That exact point came up, and I actually had the graph and did exactly like you said, so you and I are thinking the same way. So you get the point. Sorry I skipped you a minute ago, I didn't mean to do that. And then if they say, oh, it's not practical to do it, Dr. Frank, we've been going around the country teaching people how to do it. There's even better ways than this, but this is my favorite way. Think about it. Right now, our elections, half of our people are never going to trust our elections again if you're using machines. They're just never going to trust it. So I like this. This is my favorite method. You stream the whole thing so everybody can be watching it. Everybody in your community can be watching it. We spent $47 at the hardware store and we built this really sophisticated device. And a deputy loads the ballot, a deputy on the other side unloads the ballot, and the citizens, your neighbors, tally the votes. And what happens is every issue is triple counted on this side, so it's triple checked and double checked on the back. In this case, this was a 12-issue ballot. And they were able to do 1,000 ballots in 2.5 hours. And if you want, you could put a camera right on the front side and the back side up close as well, split the screen, and people could be at home doing their own tally. It would be a real election they could watch with their own eyes. So even though it doesn't guarantee that these are the real ballots from the real people, at least it restores faith in the counting process. So your community would be engaged, and your own volunteers would be doing this. The next thing they're going to say is, your county clerk is going to say, oh no, we cannot, this is not feasible. Why not? Well, because we can't get volunteers to do this. No, what's really going on is you can't get volunteers to stick needles in their eyes. And anybody who's been a poll watcher knows that's like sticking needles in your eyes, okay? Nobody, at the end of the day, after poll watching all day, you're angry, you're mad. You've seen all this stuff going on all day that you can't believe is actually going on in your elections. That's why I always encourage people to be poll watchers, because they come home and they are mad. It's like a perfect example. You've seen it with your own eyes how crazy this is. But anyway, when you allow your citizens to actually count the ballots, people line up in droves. They love it. It's fun. It's like a game. So we had in Shasta County, when we were ready, of course, and when the county clerk said, oh no, we can't get volunteers, we said, oh yeah, here's 175 Democrats, here's 175 Republicans, we've done the calculation, this will be done in 3 hours on election night with these volunteers right here. And then she said, oh no, we're not allowed to have volunteers, we have to pay these people. We said, okay, here's the budget, we've already laid it out if you pay them. And by the way, when you add it all up, it's still 10 times cheaper than what you're paying right now. I saw your hand.
However, during training, they tested us, and you feel kind of stupid because it's a lot of data coming in. You're going, okay, I hope I pass.
Yeah.
We didn't. Nobody in the room passed. It was like 40 tables, just so everybody knows. It was Talkeetna all the way out to GV or Glacier View. So we blew it, all of us, and it was great because we made honest mistakes and caught ourselves because the eye plays tricks on you when you're looking at stuff. And we didn't even have that big of an election last time, but I'm telling you, that clerk, she's on it. I don't recall her name, Debbie, I think is her name. However, it was a little much at the beginning, but then we were well trained, and I'd never done it before. I'm a geologist, so I got a scientific background, and I can do math, right?
Yeah.
Especially when there's...
You study rocks, you take them for granted.
That's right, I do. Leaverites, you know. But at any rate, I just want you guys to have some confidence. We were put through the test, but here's the rub. So we get in there in the first 5 minutes after we got the handbook and ran through it. We had an initial counting of how many ballots, regardless.
Just how many they are.
Just how many. They crashed. They went online.
The machine crashed.
All the machines crashed.
Yes.
So we burned an hour.
Oh no, machines are more accurate.
Just God, they can't even count the number of ballots, and we're all kind of standing around. Must be some fraud going on. At any rate, she said, we're done. Everything is going to be paper. So we won, kind of.
Yes.
But we were kind of annoyed that it all crashed because it was just how many ballots.
Yes.
It crashed online. Every single machine. It was pretty funny, and we're all kind of going, okay, now what do we do? So at any rate,
But you were trained in counting by hand.
But we continued without the machines, and because I was kind of going, boy, I wouldn't want to be this IT guy, right?
Yeah.
And at the last minute, because it was like, I don't know, a week before voting day. And so we hand did it, and then we did who voted for what. And we had like Daffy Duck and Shakespeare and whatnot.
Right.
And we all made mistakes, all of us.
But you can go back and double check it.
My 3 people, and I had a good team, and it was, I'm Palmer, and this was Fairview, I did it at the fire station. It wasn't even my area. And I would have done it volunteer. We did get paid, but I would have volunteered just kind of for the fun of it to see what...
It's fun to count.
It was fun.
Yes.
And so then voting day came up, and we did our deal, and you are independent from when you go in and sign your name.
Yeah.
We were completely independent. Next time I know to bring more tables because we were squished.
Yeah.
We just didn't have enough room. But I'm here to tell you, I was pretty impressed, frankly. And I tell you, that clerk, she's just bam, bam, bam.
Yeah.
And then we forgot to sign something. We got to sign as a ballot card. We got to sign like 3 different ways for Tuesday. Somehow we blew it and skipped one. They were on me. All 3 of us.
Yeah.
They were on us like, you know what. And
So
I went in and I had to sign off that I was certified.
So you trust the hand count?
And I took an oath.
Yes.
It was good.
Yeah.
So have some confidence, okay?
Yeah.
It's not that out of control.
And the best part about it is if you did make a mistake, you can go back and check.
Yeah, she said,
Yeah.
do it again.
Yeah.
Do it again.
Yes,
Do
beautiful.
it again, because your eyes...
That's what they do here. If it does, and he does it, everything's triple
You're gonna
checked.
see triple.
Yeah.
That's the hard part.
Yeah, right.
Is 3 of us blew it, and every table blew it. They
Yeah.
set us up to blow it.
Ah, gotcha.
And but we failed 3 times. I was like, boy, I'm feeling pretty stupid. I can't even count to 50.
Yeah, right.
And but your eyes play tricks. That's the hard part. Is you got to concentrate. It has to be quiet.
Well, in this case, you could have a camera on it too, so you'd have a record. And so,
This is kind of cool with your trolley.
yeah, exactly. Very good. My favorite thing about this whole situation, though, my favorite whole thing is that it's all online. Yeah, that's a joke. Yeah. All right. Bottom line. Here's the thing. Stalin said the people who cast the votes decide nothing. The people who count the votes decide everything. So you need to be counting your own votes. Did you have a hand, brother?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for your example of Wisconsin's legislature. I served with David in the legislature last cycle, and that was like deja vu. They got it covered up. So to clarify what you're advocating for, you're not just advocating for doing the election by paper and counting by paper. It sounds like you're also advocating for keeping the voter rolls by paper and not having them in the computer. Am I understanding you correctly?
Yes, they're called precinct books, and we did it that way for 200 years.
Okay.
There you go.
And the reason why I wanted it in a precinct book is because I can't hack into your precinct book, but I can hack into your computer. And if you want to have an Excel spreadsheet or an Access database that your local clerk is working on locally and printing paper copies every once in a while as backups, I have no objection to that. The point is, you're in control of it, not the state. And right now, your state is in control of your voter rolls, not you. If you die today, I love you, but if you die today, your clerk can't take you out of the rolls. Only the state can do it. That's stupid. She knows, yep, he died, I'm taking him out of the rolls. Or if you move away today and you say, hey, Jane, I'm going away, I'm moving to Colorado, go ahead and take him out of the rolls. She'll say, sure, I got it for you. Have a great trip, have a great life. She can take you out. But she can't do that. In your state, only the state can do that. And so it generates this really bad situation, which I'm about to show you. Yeah, I see another hand.
Okay. So there is Eric in the state, and I've been writing a lot of letters and getting a lot of people to fight it, but the Lieutenant Governor, Nancy Dahlstrom, is pretty hard over on keeping it.
Yeah.
So I guess from that standpoint, where can we go from there?
Well, Eric is a stupid idea, because what you're doing is you're taking all your motor vehicle records and all of your voter records, and you're putting them in a big pile, and you're sharing them with 32 other states. What's wrong with that? Well, you're telling everybody your signature from your driver's license. You're telling everybody who's registered to vote in your state. And if you're registered to vote here and you're registered to vote in Colorado, and I go and I look and I say, oh, she's voting in Colorado, she lives there now. Guess what? That's a name I can use and cheat with up here. And so you're giving away all the information necessary to somebody to cheat your election. The signatures, the addresses, the voting history, everything. So Eric is a bad idea. In fact, I'm not the only one that thinks that. 12 states have gotten out of Eric in the last 6 months. Okay, but it's just a sort of an exaggerated central control of everything, right? Not only does your state have control of central control, but guess what? Now 32 states are all connected. Dumb idea. Get out of that stuff. Keep your own books local. I don't know your clerk here in this town, but you know what? Is this a she? I already trust her more than I trust your lieutenant governor, okay? So I think you should put her in charge of your election and cut the umbilical cord of the state and let her run it. I would trust that 100 times more than what you got right now. See where I'm going? That's where I'm headed. All right, now let me show you your data now for your state. You ready? I've prepared you. You're all ready to learn what I'm about to show you for your own state. So what I did is I went and looked up the 18 and older population for every state in America. I did this for the 2020 election because I made this graph 2 years ago. Wow, 2 years, wow. Okay. And what I did, I sorted the states in alphabetical order, so you're first. And then I showed how many people are of voting age in every state. You see that? These are voting age. Now, then I went to each state and I looked up how many people were registered to vote in every state. Simple thing to look up. And I showed that as the black bar. So you notice California's got a big population and this is how many are registered to vote. And Florida's got a big bar and this is how many registered to vote. But if you look carefully, such as in Alaska, some of them have more people registered to vote than they have people. Do you see that? 7 states have more people registered to vote than they have 18 and older people. Okay, what did I say before? Every state the voter rolls are growing faster than the voter rolls, and to boot, 7 states have more people in the voter rolls than they have people. That can't be real. Yeah.
But that's just the population over 18. That's not people that are eligible to vote.
You're
So
right.
that number is actually more corrupt than what your graph shows.
Correct. This is conservative.
Because half of us here are felons. So
You got it. You understand my point exactly. This is a bad situation, yes? Now I can also show how many people voted in every state, but I want to show you those data in a different way. So, and by the way, before we leave this slide, you have in 2020 had about 550,000 people of voting age, and you have 108% of them registered. Okay, got it? And and about 65% of that 108% voted. So that's a dangerous situation you're in, and let's talk about that a little more. I'm not the first person to notice that. I already mentioned about Judicial Watch. Judicial Watch has identified 353 counties in the United States in this situation, and some of them are in whole states. It's a mess. So I'm not the first one to figure that out. Let me show you how you compare to other states. So across the bottom here, this is from 50% up to 120%. How many people of voting age are registered to vote? Of course, when I talk to the county clerks around your state, around every state, they all say the same thing. I say to them, what percentage of your voting age people do you have registered to vote? And they always say, oh, it's about 60 to 70%. That's natural. Because when people, and especially in your state, people move in and they're transient. They come in, they go out. And so what happens is people will come in and they don't immediately register to vote. It might take them a year, it might take them time. Sometimes when they get their driver's license, they're immediately put in, or sometimes once they satisfy the residency requirement, they get the PFD and that puts them in the voter rolls. And so, but there's a delay, right? And then people move away and they're still in the rolls, they didn't get taken out yet. So there's a natural fluctuation. But if you ask the clerks, they'll say you pretty consistently it's between 60 to 70% are in the voter rolls. And of course, if you shouldn't have more than 100%, that's just stupid. Okay, and then on this axis, you've got what percentage of voting age people voted. So what percentage of voting age people vote are registered on the bottom, and what percentage of them vote is on vertical. So I'm showing you the same data before, but on two axes. Who's registered, who votes. So imagine a situation where you have a low turnout and dirty voter rolls. It's probably no fraud because you have very few votes, but it's dangerous because you have a lot of extra names in the rolls that could be used for fraud, so that's dangerous. Or imagine a situation where you have really clean voter rolls and a high turnout. That's good, that's what we want. Clean voter rolls, high turnout, that's America. What you don't want is to be along the diagonal. The rolls are getting dirtier and dirtier and dirtier, and more ballots are coming in. That's like saying the water is getting dirtier and dirtier, and we're drinking more and more of it. That's what you don't want. You want to have clean voter rolls. So, in other words, I can make the math really easy. I promised I would do that. Good, bad, okay? See how I can make the math easy, I promise. So, here are the 7 states that have more people registered in them than they have available people. And it's Maine and Vermont and Michigan, New Hampshire, North Dakota, Kentucky, and Arkansas. I know that's an Alaska joke. I've learned that since I've been here. Yeah, exactly. But notice you guys have the dirtiest rolls of all. You're at 108%, okay? But notice something else about this. These are all blue states, and these are all red states. So in other words, it's not a blue-red issue. This is not a political issue. This is not Democrats versus Republicans. This is we the people versus centralized roles. That's the problem. All right, so I can show you the rest of the country now. And it's even funny how it follows a diagonal. Just like I said, we don't want it to. As it's getting dirtier and dirtier, the turnouts are going up and up. Now, the problem with this graph is that my denominator, who's the people are percent of 18-year-olds, it's kind of a funny number, but I used all the official numbers from the states. Something else interesting happened, that's you guys. Oregon took all of the people that used to be inactive and made them active. They felt sorry for you guys being out there all alone. So now there are 8 states out there that have more people in the voter rolls than they have people. And in Oregon, guess what they do? They mail a ballot to every person in the voter rolls. And I've heard that in your state, you're proposing mailing ballots to everybody in your voter rolls. Wait a minute. If you're going to mail ballots to everybody in your voter rolls, you have more people in your voter rolls than you have people. Where are all those ballots going? You're just basically equipping the bad guys to have all the ballots they need to stuff your elections. That's a dumb idea. Don't do that. Fight that tooth and nail. That is, you're giving away your election. Don't do that. So anyway, the other thing is like, for example, California, if I take out their illegal aliens, whoop, now they're up there. In Texas, if I take away their illegal aliens, so you see where I'm going. There's a little funny business in this graph, but it gives you the general impression. The general impression is that there are no clean states in the country. Yeah.
It occurs to me that some of states that are called blue states may not really be blue states. They think, oh, it must have been my neighbor that voted blue, even though, and they think everybody else voted the opposite, and everybody's thinking that.
You are right on the money, gal. And I'll show you something. And when I show you this graph, you're going to say, oh my goodness, we've been duped. I'm going to address that. Can you wait for a minute? And I'll address that. Yes, sir.
So last year during my statewide campaign, we did the math, and including both legal and illegal aliens and felons, at least the best data we could come up with at the time, we were at 113%.
Because you took out, and I even told you it was about 5%, didn't I? So that, and I said 108 plus 5, there you go, 113. So that's a good national average. So, but think about this for a minute. I'm going to come back to that. Let me come back to that because I got a graph I'll show you that'll make this really clear. All right, now let me show you another way to look at your state. Here's another way to look at your state. All right. This is your 18 and older population over time, from 1980 to present. I just made this graph recently. It's pretty up-to-date data. So you'll notice that you were climbing until about 2012, and then you've been level or slightly dropping off. So for round numbers, let's say for the state of Alaska, you've been flat. Your population's been flat for 10 years. Flat, got it? All right, here's the number of people in your voter rolls every election. Every election since 1990, sorry. So this is not the month-to-month data. I have those, I'll show you in a minute. This is just what your state says was registered for every election, every 2 years. And you'll notice a couple things about it. By the way, this is about 70% of that. Your voter rolls were cleaner then, and remember what I said, your clerk, all the clerks always say, oh yeah, we have about 60 to 70% of our people registered. That would be that number. And so what I would expect is this black curve to just kind of climb along parallel to that blue line. As you grew, your rolls would grow. That's what I would expect. But something interesting happened. In the mid-90s, right after about 1993, your voter rolls suddenly shot up. You had just about everybody registered to vote in your state. No, your voter rolls just got really dirty at that point. And I'm going to address this with you on another graph. You're going to love what I tell you about this. Anyway, so that filled it up. And then it looks like somebody did some cleanup. Probably there was too much complaining. I don't know. David would probably tell us. And then the blue line and the black line kind of track each other for a while. And then something happened in your state in 2014. And suddenly your voter rolls started surging again. Anybody know what that is? PFD. That's when you started automatically putting everybody in the voter rolls who gets a PFD. Okay? And so your voter rolls were already dirty, and then you started adding a whole bunch of new people. So what happened? Zoom, you went right past the population. That's why your voter rolls are dirty, just because they started out dirty, and now they're really zoomed up. Okay, now we can do some simple math, and if you just do a comparison, it's about 45,000 out of about, 550,000, something like that. So let's just say it's around 10%, especially because if you use his number of 113 or mine of 108%. Round numbers, you have about 10% too many people in your voter rolls, more than your population. But really, it should be about 30%, 70% to 100, plus 5. So you're like easily 30% too many people in your voter rolls, if you follow me. By the way, I did a double check on the population. I always do at least one double check in my graphs because I want to make sure I'm not doing something silly. And I looked up your Department of Labor and Workforce, and your population's been flat, so it just confirms my data. I just want you to see I try to be rigorous the best I can. If there's something happened in 1993 in our country, it's called NVRA, National Voter Registration Act. The first year of the Clinton administration, they passed the NVRA, the National Voter Registration Act, But don't forget, that was also the contract with America, and we had a Republican majority in the legislature. You see where I'm going with this? This is not about Republican and Democrat. This is about central control of our elections. So that was 1993 when that surged. If you followed the population trend, remember I told you, instead you have about 212,000. Let's just say round numbers, 200,000 too many people in your voter rolls based upon your population. 200,000 out of 600,000 is about 1 in 3. So about a third of the people, which is about 30%, which is what I've been telling you, it's about 30% too many. If we say, no, we only care about how much it increased after the PFD, that's about 100,000 too many relative to the population. So and that's about 1/6, so about 15%. So somewhere between 50 and 30 is a reasonable estimate. You've got too many people in the voter rolls, and I've already been studying your voter rolls. I'm telling you right now, they're closer to 30%. You have too many people in your voter rolls. I also can track how many people voted in every election. And you notice that presidential elections are more popular than midterms, and there's kind of a natural oscillation of presidential versus midterm. And you'll notice that after HAVA 2002, the Help America Vote Act, when everybody switched to machines, I usually have more data back here too. This is usually pretty smooth, kind of like this. It suddenly became more volatile. And there's a sudden jump in voting too. So suddenly you all became more patriotic when we added machines. Yeah.
2012 was a presidential election year. How come the numbers are down in 2012? Was that the natural suppression of the vote by the candidate?
For the second term of Obama.
That must have been Mitt Romney that suppressed the vote.
Do you know, I did an analysis of that election. I've been modeling elections for 40 years. I did an analysis of that election. Obama lost votes in every state in America. He was very unpopular for his second term. And that's reflected there because it was extra high when he was a charismatic campaigner. But that's a little off topic, but you get the point. I just want you to notice that there's a distinct change in the character of your elections since you added machines. In other words, there's an effect of how people vote based upon the machines. I can show you this kind of graph for every state in the country. It's clear as day. It used to be smooth, now it's bumpy, and it's changed. It looks different. So machines are affecting our elections. Why should machines affect our elections? They should have no effect. They should just make it easier or harder to do the election. Shouldn't affect it. All right. But I also noticed something else, and this is a statistical fallacy, so I'm not committing that statistical fallacy. I just want you to notice something. I want you to notice that the amount you suddenly surged past the population is the amount that the election suddenly surged from 2016 to 2020. It's the same amount. And I just think that's an interesting correlation, that this sudden jump in new people in your rolls matches the sudden jump in how many ballots you counted. I think that's pretty interesting correlation. I didn't say it was fraud, I just noticed the correlation. You got me? All right, now. Yes?
Is what you're saying is the reason why that there's an increase in the voting the reason why that you're having a turnout in the voter is because you also have the machines are voting that extra 30%.
I didn't say that.
Well, I am. I'm saying, could there be a correlation? Let's say
there is a correlation.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
There is a correlation. What's different about me from what most people are saying is they'll rush out and they'll scream at the media, see, we prove there's fraud. I ain't saying that. Did you see me say that? I was very careful to not say that. Okay. But what I do is let's identify who those 45,000 new voters are, because I have a copy of your voter rolls, and let's go knock on those doors and let's find out. In other words, what does a scientist do? A scientist notices a pattern and then they set up an experiment and we go do the experiment, and that's what I do. That's why I give you copies of your voter rolls, and we have little routines we do to help filter them and concentrate them, and I want you to go confirm cases of fraud. Let me give you some examples of fraud. Let's say you have a person who's dead and the ballot was cast for them and counted. That's obviously fraud. That dead person did not cast that ballot, right? Unless they were voting for Biden. Okay, so That's a Seth Keshel joke, so I stole that from him. Okay, all right, but then, or let's say that you're tired of this cold weather, so you moved to Colorado and you live in Colorado now, but you're still in the voter rolls up here. And so I downloaded from the post office the list of everybody who moved out. And so I know that you aren't here anymore. And I looked in the voter rolls, you're still there. So guess what I'm going to do? I stuff a ballot in your name. Okay? So what we do is we knock on that door and we find out you don't live there anymore. Because the new resident says, I've lived here 3 years. That's the former resident that lived here. So what we do is, since I have teams in every state, we call down in Colorado, in that neighborhood, and we say, hey, team member, will you go knock on that door for us and verify that that person lives there? Yes. And will they sign an affidavit swearing they're not voting up here? Yes. Because, by the way, the voting records show they're voting there. So if they're voting here and voting here, that's a case of fraud. Do you see where I'm going? So we are going to find actual cases of fraud. We're not going to make statistical arguments and scream at the media. We are going to find actual cases of fraud. We're going to document every one. We're going to have full proof of every single case of fraud. Then once you have, and what I'm going to help you to do is find 200 at first. And then we're going to narrow them down to 50 of the sweetest, nicest, cleanest cases. Because my dad always used to say, if you have 10 arguments, use 5, because the 6th argument is weaker than the 5th. We're going to find your cleanest 50 unassailable cases of fraud. We're going to take them to your local clerk, and we're going to show them to her. And she's going to be shaking in her boots, because you're showing actual fraud in your elections. You're not asking her to research it. You're not giving it to her to clean up the rolls. You're putting her on notice that there's fraud in the election, and you're on to it, and you're going to keep finding more because you got 200 more cases in process. How long does that take? If you started today and I gave you a copy of your rolls, I bet you would have 200 cases from me if 10 of you went out knocking in 2 weeks, 2 Saturdays, because we're going to concentrate the list. The slow part is that you got to do all the documentation and follow up. And it typically takes 2 to 3 months once you start canvassing to kind of have it all documented and beautiful. And then what I want you to do is I want you to call me, or somebody like me, somebody with a lot of experience at this, and I want you to try it out on me. In other words, they call that peer review in science. What we do is you want me to beat up your list. We want that to be a perfect list, no flaws in it whatsoever. Everyone is fully documented. And then guess what you're going to do? You're going to go to your assembly meeting at the end of the month or whatever day they meet, and you're going to get up and you each have 3 minutes, right? And you're going to get in a line and you're going to read all of those cases of fraud into the public record. And they can't stop you. And that's why it's super important that everyone is perfect, because the media is going to follow up on every one of those. And we want to make sure there's no mistakes, because if there's even one mistake, the media is going to say, see these cornball, wingnut, conspiracy wackos, they don't know what they're doing. No, we're going to have perfect cases of fraud. And then when your assembly members say, oh, but that's only 50 cases, then we're going to say, no. This is the first 50 of about 200 more we got, and we ain't quitting. This is just 2 Saturdays of work. Wait till you see how many more we have coming. And by the way, if you think 50 isn't enough, then you and 49 other borough employees have to give up your ballot, because that's what you're asking us to do. And each one of those ballots is disenfranchising one of us from our constitutional rights to a ballot, and we aren't going to tolerate it anymore. And we're going to tell the lieutenant, you're not asking them to, you're being the government. We're going to tell the lieutenant governor, we're not voting this way anymore, because this system is stealing our constitutional rights. Just like we're not going to let you take our guns away, because that's stealing our constitutional rights. We're not going to let you take our votes away, because that's stealing our constitutional rights. So you can pound sand, come and take it. That's what you have to do. You're going to have to find your stones. Yeah.
So, with what I witnessed as counting, even though it was a small election, if you will, local election, and like assembly, school board, etc., ballot measures. So how can we feel confident that we've got a great clerk, say, and I don't know her, but
you don't care.
But I saw, you know, I felt very confident. That's one reason I did it. But here's the rub: we don't have access to Juno readily. How can we?
I have it to Juno already.
Okay, well, here's the rub. Because we don't have great access, we the people.
What don't you have access to? I give you your own rolls.
And I don't have airplane tickets, but my point being is that because our capital's buried, if you will.
Capital has nothing to do with this. You're gonna fix your county, your borough.
That's right.
We're gonna do it right here.
But
Your district.
my point being is how do we have confidence that it's going from the MatSu borough and is accurate? This is a little different. I'm not questioning the voter roll and what you're saying. What I'm saying is our accounts to Juneau. So in other words, borough to state.
I'm gonna give you a copy of voter rolls, and it's gonna say your name next to your address and the list of elections that you voted in.
Unless we have a hand-carried messenger of the ballot, she's saying when it travels.
When it goes to Juneau from the borough, from here, say, how can we, as voters, even though we all did our thing and we did it correctly and the borough.
This is a non sequitur for me.
charging.
I don't understand why you're going here.
I'm saying from the MatSu borough, when they
Someone
give the
doesn't-
tallies to Juneau, how can we have confidence that our correct data is going correctly to Juneau? And that
Because you
they're not
counted it
going
first.
around?
Because you counted it first.
No, but they don't redo the numbers once it's in Juneau.
Well, I can tell you what I did, our parties
I'm not following.
run our presidential elections, and so when our party does our presidential election, and I was the certifying authority for our district, I was the chairman of the district.
Yeah.
We got our numbers, posted them on our district website, and we sent them up, to the higher level, and we never lost our numbers, and everybody that wanted to.
And since you counted it first, you know what they are, and you can check and you know, and you can just verify.
Website was crashed and I.
Well, you don't care what they say. You ran your own election and you know your own numbers. Why are you looking to them?
I checked for my son who moved from the valley to Anchorage and went in online the night of the election. And the website crashed because I was worried somebody was going to steal his vote. And it crashed. So I don't have any recourse just to check on the kiddo. So my point is there's a disconnect potentially between the MatSu borough, for instance, or counties or boroughs or whatever you want to call them, to the state of Alaska.
I don't think that's an issue. If you counted them first yourself, you know what it is. I think you count them, you know what the totals are. Later, you check the lieutenant governor's website or your election website. If the numbers don't match, you tell Juneau, you're wrong. We counted them ourselves. We have all the documentation. I mean, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't think it has any bearing on this. Yes.
I did go door to door for Kelly, midterm or when we were voting for Kelly. And I saw the voter rolls and there were dead people on there. I went door to door, asked them.
I
Yes,
know
that
what
person's
I'm
dead.
talking about.
Yep, and that person owned the house, but the rolls were wrong.
Yes.
So they're not good.
I promise you, your rolls are dirty. More than 20%, probably closer to 30%. Because I've been doing this in now over 3,000 counties I've analyzed, and you have some of the worst rolls ever. And I have a good estimate. It's going to be between 20 and 30%, probably closer to 30. Yeah.
If I could summarize, I think what the nice lady behind me was
Yes.
trying to get after and how you were trying to answer it is what she's presenting is a chain of custody problem, in that we counted X number of thousands of ballots here, and then the state reported X number of thousands plus.
And if it's different, then they're wrong.
It proves our point.
Ding!
It proves our point. You actually want them to do that.
That would be great if they did. Because you counted your own and you documented everything and everything is transparent.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Don't make a problem out of the solution.
Yes. Now, I can do what I can do for every borough what I did for the state, but I'm going to confess. I didn't know I was going to be in the valley today. I thought it was going to be tomorrow. So I didn't make the graph for you, but I've done 2 of the boroughs. I'll get yours done tomorrow because I'm going to be here 2 more days, right? Okay, I'll get yours done tomorrow, but I can tell. Okay, this is more fun. This is science. This is science. I'm going to make a prediction. And tomorrow I'll post it on Rumble, okay? And we'll see whether I'm right or wrong, okay? And if I'm wrong, it's okay. It just means we're going to learn something, but I bet you I'm going to be right. Okay, but that's fun. So we're going to have a little game together, yes, you and me? So here is Anchorage Borough, and this is their population climbing, 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 and they've been dropping in population for 10 years. And she's laughing because what do you see? Your voter rolls are climbing, okay? So they're not even just holding steady, they're dropping, but their voter rolls are growing. Do you see this? That's not going to be very logical, is it? And they've got about 18,000 too many people in the voter rolls, simply based upon the population trend. You get the idea? All right. And then I did Kenai, because that's when I was in Kenai the day before yesterday. And I wish I had yours tonight. I'm sorry. I'll do the work. I promise. I'll put it on my Rumble channel tomorrow, or on my first pick or something, so you can see it. So here's Kenai. They're climbing, 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 and look, they have the same pattern. Do you notice that they have the same surge after 1993, and the same subsequent surge? Let me go back to Anchorage. They have that surge, and they have the same subsequent surge. My prediction is when I do your county, your borough, you're going to have that surge and that surge. That's my prediction, and my prediction is you're going to be right past the population.
The surge is when?
The surge starts, leading up to 2000, and this surge here,
What year?
Starting in 2014. Okay, so my prediction is 3, and I could be wrong, but I'm going to have fun. This is a game. Now I'm not going to be able to go sleep tonight until I do it, because now I got that in my craw. Okay. You're going to have a surge there, and you're going to have a surge there, and you're going to go past the population, okay? And I'm happy to be wrong, but I'm probably going to be right. You get the point? But what you're going to see is, as I do county after, or borough after borough after borough, you watch. Every one of them is going to have the same shape as all the others, just like I've shown you in all the other states. Why? Because it's centrally controlled, okay? And so I will have proven my point here as well. As in all the others. Now, when I go to states, I usually go over and over again. Each time I go, I add more and more analyses to that state, because I'm working all day, every day. I can only do so much. So each time I come back, I'll be showing you more and more. But I did spend too much time on one thing. I see your question, I'll come back. I spent too much time doing this, but I just couldn't resist. So one of my most powerful analyses I do is by age. Your state hides your age in your voter rolls. Most states don't hide the age, so I get to know the age of every voter. But your state does show the age groups for the whole state. So I spent a long time downloading for every month since 2004, by month, how many people are in every age group. And this is how your state divides them: 18 to 19 years old, 20-year-old, 21, 22 to 24. See these age groups, right? Your state has divided, and it's showing you for the whole state. I would love to have this by borough, but your state doesn't give it to me, so I can do the whole state. But I just noticed something about this. So this first curve here on the bottom, see this first curve, is for 18-year-olds and 19-year-olds. I think it was 18 and 19, wasn't it? Yes, for 18 and 19-year-olds. Okay. Can you tell I did a lot of work on this? Okay. Notice, right before 2004, there's a nice little surge in registration of 18 and 19-year-olds. I would expect that actually every election, because that's the new surge of new voters coming into your election. I would expect that. And then they don't hang around long. Maybe that's military kids, maybe that's kids that leave the cold weather, and it just kind of steadily declines and smooths out. And then 4 years later, right before 2008, a new batch of 18, 19-year-olds get registered, and it just kind of peters out gradually. I would call that a natural trend. I would say that's probably normal. 18-year-old, and I'm going to show you some other data in a minute that'll confirm that's normal. The biggest group of surge is usually the 18-year-olds, the new voters coming into the elections. Okay, but notice what happened in 2012. Suddenly, it's a 2-year cycle. Why are you having a 2-year cycle of surges in voting rolls? See where I'm going? And what happened here after 2018? Suddenly, it's every year. You have a spike every year, a surge, of new 18-year-olds, and then after the election they're taken out, and surge, and then they're taken out. Where have we heard that before? Isn't that very interesting? So now these are only statistics, so I'm not saying that that's proof of fraud, but it's the same exact trends I've seen in other states by age. And you notice that there you have the same problem with the 20-year-olds. There's a sudden surge in the performance. What suddenly happened in 2017, 2018? We know that's the PFD, huh? It's sudden. You got to see a sudden surge in those voters. Same thing with the 21-year-olds. So one of the things I like to do is I like to use statistics to tell us where to look. So I would be looking in young people's votes, and I usually find in most states I'm looking at the older voters to find fraud, but I bet you there's a lot in your younger population here. And given the fact that you have such a big insurge of military and outsurge of military kids, I bet your rolls are full of young military voters that aren't here anymore, and they're somewhere else and voting somewhere else. It's my guess. You've been waiting patiently, brother. What can I say for you?
Well, I think you may have made my point. So it's worse than you think in terms of how dirty it is. We do have a very transit population with the military moving in and out, in and out.
Yes.
And so when Anchorage a couple years back switched to vote by mail, massive scandal where people are getting ballots for 6 people that don't live there. Because when you go through the voter rolls, you commonly see a household with 3 sets of couples. So it is worse than we think. It's not just the felons, it's not just the illegal aliens and the legal aliens that are on the rolls that shouldn't be there. There's a lot of people that don't exist here because they moved out of state. Tons.
You're right. You're right. And let me just give you an example of the kind of data that I'm going to give you. This is just a screenshot. While I was studying your rolls, while I was getting ready to come up here, I wanted you to see what the rolls look like. So this is not a real Excel spreadsheet. This is just a screenshot. But I just want you to see, this is one of the algorithms, one of the simplest algorithms I run on it at first, and then I just give this to you. What this is this is sorted by address. So this is District 4 in your state, whichever that is. I don't remember what that is. Oh, it's Douglas, City of Douglas. And they're sorted by address. See how they're sorted by address? And the shading tells you who's at the same address. So these 2 people, Anya and Michael Nelson, live at this address. Got it? And they're shaded. And then the next 4 are at the same address. And let's see, it's Jesse Higdon, Jeffrey Martinson, Janine Reap, and Jay Hubbard. Wait a minute. 4 different last names live at the same address. That's interesting. And I've highlighted this one because my algorithm picked it out. These 2 people voted in the general election in 2020, and there's more fraud in the 2020 election than just about any other election. So I was highlighting that, bringing that out to our attention. I would definitely check those 2. So this would be an address I'd recommend we go knock on. Go knock on that door. Does that prove this fraud? There might be a perfectly reasonable explanation for that that's not fraud. But I've learned if you sort the rolls this way, and I just give you a copy of your rolls, and you knock on every suspicious door, you're going to get a 1 in 3 hit rate. You're going to find a case of fraud every 3rd door you knock on. Yes, sir?
What if we overlay the NCOA data on top of that? If I'm looking at the one that says, okay, there's 4 people living here, and the NCOA says that guy moved away 4 years ago, that guy moved away 4 years ago, wouldn't that be a better target?
Yes, what he's talking about is the National Change of Address Registry, the NCOA. If you overlay that with this, and by the way, we do that for you for free, which you know you did, because Mr. Liddell hired a team of people in For Cause of America, and we run that for you automatically. We've been doing that for everybody all around the country. That concentrates your list even more. I don't like to run the NCOA at first, though, because you're taking out data when you do that. I recommend, when I'm working with teams, this is better at first. So for your first pass, pick these, and then run the NCOA, and then that's your second pass. Because we're not looking for all the fraud in your election at first. At first, I just want 50 sweet, juicy, perfect cases of fraud. Because you're going to go to your assembly and say, this is not just one, this is not onesies and twosies. This is systematic. And here are 50 perfect examples of systematic fraud. And why we're doing that, we're gonna get more cases of fraud, but we wanna get the ball rolling. We wanna get it out into the public what's happening. And so I've learned from my experience that it's usually better not to do the NCOA first. It's better to do that as the second phase of searching through your rolls. Is that fair?
That's fair.
Yeah, it's good. That's just from my experience. I want to show you one more thing, and then I think maybe it's a good time to stop and take questions or go home or whatever you want to do. So the question is when did all this start? When did all this start? People want to know. How long has this been going on? And this is your question. This is your question. So I wanted to know the answer to that question too. So I went and did the whole country. And I graphed for the whole country from 1960 to present how many there are 18 and older. And it's just kind of steadily climbing, yes? And then I graphed the turnout of 18 and olders around the country and the total number of votes for everybody around the country. And I noticed something very interesting. There's an inflection point right after 1996. An inflection point. And at the time I saw that inflection point, I didn't really know what it meant. I just said, wait a minute, I know that number from somewhere. Where do I know 1996 from? Something happened in 1996. What is that? So while I was exploring that, I thought, well, why don't I just first of all just compare the population trend to how many people voted in America? Okay? In other words, the voting is going up in America faster than the population. America is becoming more and more patriotic every year. Anybody who works in elections knows that's not correct. People are becoming more and more disenfranchised from elections, and there's less and less voting. But look what's happening. The amount of voting is going up. How much is it going up? It's going up. 30 million more ballots were tallied in 2020 than you would expect. How much is 30 million ballots? It's about 10% of our ballots. 10%. Okay? 10% increase, more ballots than we think. Now, I remembered where I remembered the 1996 from. Remember I told you I started out in Pennsylvania and I got to have anything I wanted, everything I wanted. So I asked for the voter history for Pennsylvania District 4, that's Montgomery County, for all time. So this is 1900 to 2020, and that's the registration year. And this is the age of the person who got registered. And the vertical axis is how many people got registered. So if you look here at the most current year, 2020, when I made this graph Christmas Eve 3 years ago, because I was fighting for my country. This was a big month, December of 2020, man. And I wasn't the only one. We were fighting like crazy in Pennsylvania. So that year, in 2020, the most number of people that got registered were 18-year-olds. And that's what I was mentioning before. That's normal, because you have surges of 18-year-olds every year. You have a new crop of people that join your voter rolls every year. That's normal. And in the year before, 2019 and 2018, you can see that's the most common surge, the common new entrance of voters in the voter rolls. You can see some older people are getting registered. That's normal because people are moving in. But for the most part, it's the big surge of the 18-year-olds. Except this one funny year. Guess what year that is? 1996. Okay, and I made this graph to show the legislature that the rolls, there were funny business in the rolls, and at the time I made this, I didn't understand it. I just said, there's something wrong with that, we need to investigate this. And so I made this graph, it's in my formal report to the legislature and whatnot. Well, later, when I started learning what all this meant, I went back and I looked these people up. First thing to notice, how many people were in that peak? 50,000 people. How much is 50,000 in a county out of 500,000? 10%. So they added 10% people to the rolls in this funny blob. Well, then I looked up to see if they voted or not. None of them voted. They added 50,000 people to the rolls and none of them voted. And that was the product of NVRA, National Voter Registration Act. States were encouraged to put people in the voter rolls in new ways that they hadn't done before. And these are people who don't even know they're in the voter rolls. And I was talking to Jason, he's the aide of one of Vance, legislator Vance down in Homer this morning. He says, oh yeah, he says we have all kinds of people in our voter rolls who don't know they're in the voter rolls. So, in other words, a bunch of people were put in the voter rolls and they didn't even know they're in the voter rolls. Got it? None of them voted. None of them voted in 1998. None of them voted in 2000. I thought something was wrong with my software. I was going through to count how many people had voted. So, review. 50,000 people, 10%, are added to the voter rolls. None of them voted in 1996. None of them voted in 98. None of them voted in 2000. But in 2002, interestingly enough, 10,000 of them voted. Almost exactly 10,000. And the number in here is almost exactly 50,000. So in other words, 10,000 out of the 50,000 voted in 2002. 20,000 of the 50,000 voted in 2004. 30,000 of the 50,000 voted in 2006. 40,000 in 2008. And all 50,000 of them voted in 2010. What am I describing to you? I am describing to you that they filled the voter rolls with a bunch of people who are not real voters in 1996. And then starting in 2000, right in here, they started adding them into the rolls gradually every other election, every 2 years. In other words, they changed you from being a red county to being a purple county to being a blue county, and you believe it. Because it's a gradual change over time. And no, you didn't change from red to blue. You're still red. It's just they've added a whole bunch of people to your rolls who are not real voters and stuffed the ballots for them year after year. This isn't, and in Montgomery County, by the way, I'm going to just tell you, that's the one I told you this wasn't even enough, that they had to add an extra 50,000 before the election. So in other words, that's 100,000 in there. When we did the door knocking in Montgomery County and the follow-up on the statistics, we learned, and this is the worst in the country, 1 in every 5 of their ballots, and we did, were fraudulent in that election in Montgomery County in 2020. 1 in every 5. And to confirm my statistics, because I don't like making statistical arguments only, I like making predictions and confirming them, we had 1,600 houses. I had them give me a list, not my pick, I blind list. You give me a list. And so the team picked out 1,600 addresses. They handed me in the list and they said, Dr. Frank, if we knock on these doors, and they got 100 volunteers to do this for 3 days, they said, Dr. Frank, if we knock on these doors, how many cases of fraud are we going to find? And I said, when you knock on these doors, 30% of the doors you knock on, you're going to find a severe anomaly that's probably a case of fraud. And they went out and knocked. They found 32%, so I was right on the money. I knew I was on track, and then we started doing more things. And sure enough, we followed my mathematics and statistics. We found 78,000 fraudulent ballots in Montgomery County before we quit looking. We documented every one of them and turned those into the legislature, and they didn't do nothing. It's amazing. Okay. Now, I'm going to show you for the whole country, and then I'm done. Because now you know about 10%. Now you know about 10%. So, I've been teaching my students for decades how to model elections. I'm a math teacher. And I use real life examples to teach them how to do the math. And so after every election, I always take one class and we sort and we analyze the election. Okay guys, let's bring our math skills and what happened in the election. So this is after the 2016 election, 2 weeks afterwards. And what I do is I say sort them from the most conservative state to the least conservative state, and show the ratio of how many ballots there were for Trump versus Hillary. So for example, in Wyoming, the ratio was a little over 3 to 1, about 3.1 to 1. 3 ballots for Trump for every 1 ballot for Hillary in Wyoming. And over here in DC, I changed the scale because if I show this peak, all these would be tiny. It's about 80 to 1 in DC for Hillary. Okay, it's really, it's ridiculously high. So DC is definitely a swamp. But anyway, so you sort them. And I told my students, I said, pay attention to this middle region right here, because these are the swing states. This is where all the action's going to be. This is where it's close. And I told him, I said, print this graph, and in 2020, pay attention to Georgia, North Carolina, Arizona, Florida, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, New Hampshire, Minnesota, Nevada. This is where all the action's going to be in 2020. It's just called the swing states. That's really not a huge prediction or anything. I'm just saying, print that and watch that. But this is why I want you to watch it. Before I leave this graph, let's just have a peek at Alaska. You are at 1.4. So you're about 1.4 to 1. So in 2016 election, for every 1.4 ballots for Trump, there was 1 ballot for Hillary. In Wyoming, it was about 3.1 to 1. So about 3 to 1. Let's see what happened in 2020. In 2020, Wyoming went down from about 3.1 to about 2.6 or 2.7 to 1. How much of a decrease is that? 10%. 10%. If you were going to decrease Alaska at 1.4 by 10%, that would be 1.4 minus 0.14. That would put us about 1.25-ish. What is Alaska now? 1.25. How much did Alaska go down? 10%. Let's compare 2020. Let me move forward a little bit. Let's compare 2020 to 2016. What do you see?
It's nationwide fraud.
Every single state shifted about 10%. Every single state in the country shifted about 10%. And what did I show you? The voting went up by 10% nationwide, more than the population. So this isn't just Alaska. This is the whole country. And this is why I need you to be, every state needs to prove it in every state that the fraud is the same in every state. And I think, what would 10% of your votes be here in your, how many total votes in your borough?
Good question.
I don't have it off the top of my head because I didn't make the graph. Is it 50,000?
For our population, it's over 100,000.
Okay, if the population is 100,000, about 80% of them are, it's actually about 70, yeah, it's about 80% are 18 and older, so let's say you have about 80,000, and oh, I was about to say, usually about 70% of those are registered to vote, but I can't say that here. You're going to have more. But what would 10% of 80,000 be? About 8,000. So we've got 8,000 potential fraud cases to find here. Do you think we could find that? Piece of cake, okay. We'll be able to find hundreds very easily from 2020. Now your other elections are less turnout, so as a percentage it might be small. But you get the point, that's what we're looking for. All right, so let me just kind of wrap this up. And then I can take questions or we can go home or whatever you want to do, because I think I've kept you long enough. I could go on for hours, I have so much more I could show you, but I think I've shown you enough. Enough for now anyway. So I hope you're kind of depressed. Because the whole country's a wreck. But I hope you're also kind of excited because I have a strategy, which I didn't go over yet. So this is a little premature. I told you the strategy. We're going to find a fraud. You're going to show it to the assembly. But there's a whole strategy. I call it the 7 steps. I forgot to go over that. I jumped around at the beginning, remember? So I went right past it. Here, I have this thing, I call it the 7 steps. The John Birch Society saw what I was doing and they got all excited and said, Dr. Frank, we love what you're doing. Would you please make a trifold describing what you're doing? Because anybody knows John Birch Society, their tables, they are all full of trifolds. They love trifolds. So I sat down and I organized a trifold describing my work. And and by the way, just this week in the New American Magazine, that's the John Birch Society magazine, they have a 5-page interview of me in there. They're very excited about the work I'm doing nationwide. The key idea in the 7 steps is education is key. That's what we're doing here. But the fix is local. You need to fix your own location, not everywhere. So I have this trifold, and there's 7 steps to it. First step is get connected. And please get connected to Dave over here, because we don't want to relearn all the lessons. Step 2 is you got to make a team, because there's a lot of work to do, right? We got to do some canvassing, we got to do some researching, we got a lot of stuff to do. Step 3, you formulate a plan. This is a war, and in a war, You don't just grab a machine gun and go run at the enemy. You make a war council, you sit down, you do research, you find out where's the enemy strong, where's the enemy weak, where are we strong, where are we weak, and you make a plan, and you execute a plan, and that's how you win. So you formulate a plan, and that depends on local nuances. Like this is a different borough than Juneau. So we might use a different strategy in Juneau than we would use here, right? It's a whole different strategy. Then we implement the plan, and Shasta County in California took us about a year to implement, but we're better at it now. I bet you could be, when I show up after the Iditarod, I bet you guys have already got a functioning team, and I bet you're already finding fraud, and I bet you by June, you'd be smoking. This place would be on fire. And that's what we want. You're going to be building a movement, because you won't win this battle with the mere evidence. You need to have a movement. You need the fraud, but if just David Eastman shows up at your assembly and says, look at all the fraud we found, what are they going to say? Get out of here, you bother us, Get out of here, you bother me, right? I bet you that in this room, because this kind of people you are, I bet you some of you are really people that show up at the assembly meetings very early and nag and whine. And they already recognize you, huh? So when you walk in the room, that's when they take out their phone to do their email, right? They don't even listen to you, okay? And so we need to have the fraud, and that day that we're reading in the fraud into the formal record, it's not just you dozen or so people. You want that room overflowing with people, and you want the media there filming it and interviewing, and that takes organization and promotion. And that's not going to be a single event. You're going to be building to that event month by month. And there are all kinds of events you can have like this where you're building the community awareness and you're going to be canvassing doors and finding more and more fraud. When you find a case of fraud at somebody's residence, you're not just finding a case. When that person finds out there's fraud in their neighborhood, they're angry. And they tell all their neighbors. So you just evangelize the whole neighborhood. You found the fraud yourself, so you're not just saying, wow, Dr. Frank gave us a talk last night. What a great talk. You should hear about all the fraud we have here. No, you found it yourself, and you talked to your friends. It's like you got saved. You have to tell everybody, okay? It's a different thing. If you're just quoting me to your friends, they look at you like, oh yeah, that wackadoodle. Yeah, that's the crackpot math teacher from Ohio. We don't believe that. But if you find it yourself, it invigorates you, and also you become a stronger witness for that. And then the third thing is you're working as a team and you're collecting these actual fraud cases, and we fully research them. Man, we're so much more powerful that way. So that's kind of how it goes. And there's more details to that, but that's a whole 2-hour training class. So maybe we'll be doing that over Zoom in the next couple of months and that sort of thing. But I just want, so there's hope. Right? By the way, this is online on my Rumble channel. You can download it. And I have a longer version of it. And it's online, and it's like a slide version. And I worked through each of the things. So help yourself. I'm not hiding anything from you. I just don't want to go over it now. I think I've given you the gist of it. Okay. So you're supposed to be a little depressed, but optimistic. Because your state's a wreck. Holy mackerel. So this aluminum rod represents America. I'm going to set the microphone down. You'll understand in a minute. This aluminum rod represents America. And this rosin I just put on my fingers represents the truth. And I've been going around the country spreading the truth in America. Not just me. Same with Seth Keshel. Same with Mike Lindell. A lot of us are spreading the truth. And as we're spreading the truth, David Eastman, spreading the truth. The truth is resonating. And the more we do it, the louder it's getting. She's got fingers in her ears. The problem with the truth is it's annoying. The truth is annoying. And when you're knocking on somebody's door and showing them fraud at their house, you're going to annoy them. When you're down at the assembly meeting at the end of the month and you're reading those cases of fraud into the rolls, into the records, you're annoying them. When you're picketing on the street saying that your assembly members who won't get on board are violating your constitutional rights and not defending your constitutional rights, you're annoying them. But the point is, if you don't annoy them, nothing's going to happen. You're going to have to become very annoying in this process. And it sounds to me like you've got the perfect leader for that. Last time I checked, David Eastman is very annoying in your state. So you need to become annoying. If you look at that slide I showed you of me talking before the president's speech, this was on the platform. I did this in front of 21,000 people, and boy, oh boy, can I get this baby loud. I had this thing screaming. I had to hold it away from me all the way back to the whole crowd could hear this outside. Resonance is very powerful. If you're annoying enough, it's very powerful, and you'll have the power to change your whole state. We can sweep the whole state. But in order to do that, you're going to have to make this loud. And I can make this unbearably loud in here. And you need to make the truth unbearably loud as well. Thank you. Hi.
Hi, I have a question. The increase of the 10%.
Yeah.
And the fraudulent
Yeah.
voters, if it's not the city clerk where that's coming from, where is that coming from? That's question number one. And we find all this fraud and we report it because it's coming from a centralized control something. How do we get it out of their hands? Is in our state, can somebody answer? Is it coming from the governor?
I know how to address this question.
Go.
First thing is, let me just answer the second question first. You said, why are you giving the fraud to them? You're the government. We're not giving this to anyone. We are doing our job as citizens. We are being the government. We are collecting this fraud for ourselves. We're just putting them on notice that we're not going to tolerate the state taking away our constitutional rights anymore. And by the way, we're going to not tolerate you either, assembly members, of taking away our votes anymore either. And so we're not going to wait for the next election to remove you from office. We're going to remove you yesterday if you continue to disenfranchise us from our constitutional rights. You're not going there to ask them permission. You're the government. They work for you. You're going there to tell them that you're not going to accept use of this machine anymore, of these systems anymore. And if they say, well, the Secretary of State says we have to, you say, no. Or in your case, it's Lieutenant Governor, sorry. The Lieutenant Governor says we have to. You say, no, we nullify that. Because this system is disenfranchising us from our constitutional rights. Just like if they said, we're going to set a policy where we take away your guns. You say, no, we nullify that because the Constitution says we don't have to do that. In fact, come and take them. Okay? And so you say to them, no, come and take our votes because we ain't giving them to you anymore. You see, understand? This is not us asking permission. This is us telling them we're not going to tolerate it anymore. And you're going to build that movement in your your borough. And let's say, in the Shasta County case, we were able to get they have commissioners, not an assembly. They had 5 commissioners. We were able to get 2 of the commissioners on board. And then 3 of them were resisting. So we started picketing their houses. And we started picketing them at work. And we started picketing them when they dropped. See you guys. Nice to meet you guys. You're welcome. Thanks. Good to see you guys. I love families like that. We were picking, like when the grandma, who was one of the commissioners, dropped her kids off at school, we were picketing them at the school with signs. The supermoms had signs, Jane won't defend our constitutional rights. So then grandma had to explain to her grandchildren why she wasn't defending their constitutional rights. And the grandchildren had to explain to all of their students at school why her grandmother wasn't defending their constitutional rights. The next day, that woman resigned because these people are so rude. Yeah, come on, it's a war. This is a war. We can be rude. You know, we want to fight with our First Amendment weapons so that we don't have to fight the Second Amendment war. We want to fight the First Amendment war, and we're going to use all of our First Amendment weapons. Do you see why I said you got to have stones? That we have to do this. We have to step up. So I think that was the second question, right? You're not giving it to them and expecting them to do something. We're giving them instructions. By the way, we're informing you we're not doing our elections that way anymore. And by the way, the clerk works for us too. We pay her salary. She's not going to run the election that way. You're not going to give her that option. You're telling her. It's just like you're not going to give the governor the chance to take away your guns. Come and take them, right? And if they don't cooperate, you're going to run your own election. See where I'm going? And then, well, what if the state won't accept our results? Fine. Let's have the fight. It's time for a fight. This is for real. This is a war. So I think that's the second question. What was the first question again?
If the entry of this 10%.
Oh, you asked who it was.
Yeah, if it's not the city clerk.
It's not.
Oh, right, okay, so where's it coming from?
And in fact, when I meet with the clerks, I know it never works at first, but I walk in and I tell them, Madam Clerk, you are not my enemy. I am not after you. You are being asked to use a system which exposes your system to fraud. You're not the bad guy. In fact, we're about to bring you a bunch of cases of fraud, and when we do, you're going to be faced with a choice. Your choice is going to be, you're going to tell the people, sorry, I'm going to force you to use the system which disenfranchises you, or okay, I understand your concern, we're going to go back to this other way which is safer. You're going to be forced with that choice. But you're going to be in a situation, Madam Clerk, that you now know. And we're going to hold you accountable because you now know. And you're going to be responsible for disenfranchising us from our constitutional rights, and we're going to sue you, and we're going to throw you out of office, we're going to do whatever it is we're going to do it. And it's the same way with your assembly members. Okay, if you're not going to protect our constitutional rights, we're going to take matters into our own hands. We'll give you first chance. We elected you to defend to do this, but if you're not going to, we're going to. And there's lots of ways to do that. We've been doing this all around the country. So now you ask, who's doing it? Remember I told you I had full access in Pennsylvania. Well, remember I told you there are 32 NGOs that had access to the voter rolls. So the top one was the Hillary Clinton campaign, next one was CTCL, next one was Rock the Vote, next one was Antifa. There were like 32. Look at your county budget. Look at your county budget, and you're going to notice that your borough budget. Notice how much money your budget gives to local non-government organizations. Have you ever noticed that? Okay. And if you saw the movie 2,000 Mules, there's a really funny article in Arizona, and one of the Arizona newspapers they came across. It said, the sheriffs are arresting the mules, and they're singing like canaries. It's funny. So what happens is the sheriffs arrest the mules say, yeah, we got the ballot over here at this NGO, and it was we got paid $10 for depositing that. And so it's like a drug addict, right? When you're doing a drug bust, you don't care about the guy at the end, you want to climb up the ladder. So the sheriffs arrest them, they say, if you tell us where you got the ballot, we'll let you off, and so they let them off. They go to the NGO where they got the ballots, and they say to the NGOs, where did you get the ballots? And where did you get the money? And I can tell you the national statistics I've gathered. On average, about 20% of the ballots are what they call organic harvesting. And a simple example of organic harvesting is like what they were doing at the campus at UCLA. The NGOs were scouring the campus, going around to students. Give us your ballot, we'll give you $200 cash. Okay? In Costa Mesa, in Orange County, they were getting paid $100 a ballot. The students were being offered $100. Now, where did those NGOs get that money? CTCL, Center for Tech and Civic Life, from the county, because the county was awarding them grants that would say, we've got all these homeless people in town, and they aren't registered to vote, and we need to get them registered to vote. We need to help them to vote, because, we want everybody to vote. So give us a grant, and we will work hard to deliver 100 new voters to our election system. What they're really doing is buying ballots and stuffing ballots for the mules. You see where I'm going? And then, so that's the organic harvesting. 20% or so are organic harvesting. About 40% are ballots that come from the post office. So when you mail out a bunch of ballots to these dirty voter rolls, what happens? A bunch of them are non-deliverable. So they're sitting at the post office, and the guy says, well, I know I can't deliver that one. It goes into that box. I can't deliver that one. So they develop this big box full of ballots that are not deliverable. But they have a cash value. On average, around the country, it's about $50 a ballot. So that box, let's say it's got 100 ballots in it, that's $5,000 cash sitting right there. The janitor at the post office goes, that's interesting. I'll take a stack of those home with me tonight. Nobody will miss those. Drops them off at the NGO, $50 a piece. You can pay your rent pretty quickly. So that works. So that's 40% of the ballots. And then the remaining 40% of the ballots, I'm just giving you kind of averages from around the country, come from the ballot printers. When your clerks send out ballots to be mailed, they don't print them themselves and put them in envelopes and mail them. They contract with the ballot printing company. And the way this happens is they send them a list, and the ballot is printed, the envelope is printed, it's automatically stuffed. It's a commercial printer, it's like people that do bulk mail. And then the last step before the ballot is stamped and mailed does a bad address list check with the post office. All commercial printers are not allowed to just bulk mail a community. Everything has to be checked by bad address first. It's law in most states because it stops all this junk mail from getting sent all over that doesn't have any real address. So they have to do a bad address check first. And if it's a good address, they slap a stamp on it and it goes to the box that goes to the post office. If it's a bad address, it goes over into the other box. And so you can imagine these commercial printers make huge piles of ballots that are addressed, but it's a bad address and it's sitting there in the box. Think about that. That's ready-made. You already know who the name is. You already know everything's ready, and you take those down to the NGO and they pay you cash for that. So that's another source. So that's the who and that's the how. Do you remember soon after the election in 2020, there was a guy from Pennsylvania. Actually, it was during the election season of 2020. There was a guy from Pennsylvania, a USPS contractor, driving 200,000 ballots from New York down to Pennsylvania. Does that sound familiar? And they were all ballots that were unstamped. They were envelopes, ballots completed in envelopes unstamped. You understand? So there's a huge number of, where were those going? To some NGOs being distributed and being dumped in boxes and whatnot. So that's who the they are that I have direct evidence for. But there are other people say, oh, but this is a vast, global conspiracy and things, and they might be right too. I just don't have any evidence for that. You notice that everything I say I have direct evidence for or direct experience with, or I won't tell you. So I've given you some of the they, have I? How'd I do? Another question. Yeah, brother. Oh, sorry, we skipped this lady. Ladies first.
I'm not even sure how appropriate this is, but I'm going to ask it because I saw someone ask this online. How many ballots are you finding that are for Jehovah's Witnesses?
That's so funny you ask that. So, Jehovah's Witnesses, by their faith, are not allowed to vote. And so, if you know Jehovah's Witnesses friends, look them up in the rolls. I'm about to give you a copy of the rolls. And if they voted, you go talk to your Jehovah's Witness friend and you say, hey, it says in the rolls you've been voting. I thought that was against your faith. And they go, I never vote. Oh, would you sign an affidavit swearing you didn't vote? Ding, 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 case of fraud. There are several little tricks like that. We've noticed that, for example, in Southern California, there are whole neighborhoods of illegal aliens, and you might have some neighborhoods like that here too, I don't know. But and so what you do is you know that neighborhood, and so you look up that neighborhood in the rolls, and if any of them voted, those are likely to be fraudulent ballots. What's likely to happen is somebody ordered absentee ballots on behalf of those illegal aliens and gathered them up and harvested them and they're using them. Usually, I've noticed illegal aliens don't usually vote. They don't want to vote. They want to stay under the radar. They know it's a felony, and if they get caught, they never can be a citizen. And so they don't want to do it. And so if you have a friend named Enrique that speaks Espanol and can go into the neighborhood and talk to those Mexican illegals, they can say, hey, Enrique, it says here in the rolls, or hey, Juan, you voted in the rolls. And he goes, no, senor, I didn't vote. No, I didn't. You say, well, it says right here you did. That's a felony. You're not going to be able to be a citizen. No, senor, I didn't vote. Okay, we'll sign an affidavit swearing you didn't vote. In one neighborhood in Orange County, we found 370 of those in one illegal alien neighborhood. And think about it, and I guess this is a little iffy maybe, but it's the truth. Even if they did vote illegally, they're not going to admit it, so it's a case of fraud for you, right? You see, right? It's sort of an interesting situation now, but you get the point. Yeah.
Just very quickly, does a forensic audit have any teeth in it?
Forensic audit. So apparently Maricopa was claimed to be a forensic audit, yes? But it wasn't. Because they were denied access to the routers, they were denied access to the Splunk logs, they were denied access to, like when I told you in Pennsylvania, I got to see all that stuff. Now, there's a guy named Jovan Pulitzer who talks this word, forensic audit, and he sells these machines and access to these machines that says, use my machines because, I can find all the fraudulent ballots. And I just would like to say, he claims to have done that for a lot of money in Maricopa. How did that work out? How about that for an answer? Yeah.
Thank you very much. I am typically a massive advocate for interposition and nullification, so I appreciate this approach. I'm having a little bit of difficulty understanding the mechanics because of how messed up our state is being top down.
I agree, and I'm not sure about everything in your state either.
Right.
Because you don't have constitutional officers. So you have to be the constitutional officer.
So in our situation, we could totally do this with the borough election. We've already gone halfway there with the big hand.
That's why the beachhead did it.
Right. So, and we can do that, push that in every borough. But the boroughs don't handle at all in any way the state elections.
Why not?
They're managed completely by the state government. They're state employees that run them.
And I'm asking you, why are you going to let that keep happening?
We shouldn't let that keep happening.
Ding, 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 ding.
But it's put in place by state statute. In fact, even the borough itself has their charter.
Any statute that violates your constitutional rights, you nullify. Keep going.
So even the borough itself is created in state statute. It's a creation of it's a fabrication of the state government. So I'm having a little bit with the way nullification really works. Typically, is you get your local county or town to step in place of and defend our liberty, right? So we're going to send the borough, because the borough doesn't even have police powers. Are we going to send the borough officials into the state polling places and say, we're going to throw the machines out? I mean, what exactly? I'm still figuring that out.
Honestly, if I'm honest with you, I was surprised when I came here to find out you had no constitutional officer. So I'm not exactly sure all those details, but let me just make the analogy with the guns. It really helps. Mm-hmm. What would you do if the state sent police to come take away your guns? What would you do? What would you do? It's probably going to be very similar to that. And it's probably going to require stones. You understand the point I'm making? And I'm not sure, but what I've learned kind of, as soon as your government senses you pushing back to that degree, they rarely come in. Usually they go, whoa, 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 whoa. They back off. You understand what I'm saying? Because, I mean, they're already backing off you now, right? As soon as you started standing up, even just in a little way. So, who wants, it's sort of like in my state in Ohio. During COVID, the governor said, we're shutting down all public events, no public event with more than 10 people and all this kind of stuff. So a group of supermoms organized a dance ball in the Capitol. 600 people showed up. We played Spin the Bottle, we danced, we invited the governor, come on, join us. And we basically, had a massive super spreader party, okay? And we had a great night and filmed it and streamed it online and in your face. You're not taking away our right to assemble. That's the fourth one in the First Amendment. Okay. And then when he said, oh yeah, you have to wear masks in stores and only essential stores and whatnot. We had several stores that said, we're open. Come on in, everybody. And all these people came in without masks and would shop in those stores. And those businesses thrived and then the state would threaten them and say, we're going to do lawsuits against you and whatnot. We have multiple beautiful restaurants around the state that never used masks, always made it public to the public we're not using masks. And we nullified their claims. And one of my favorite though, and it's more analogous to you, is about 40 supermoms will go shopping every day. And they'd say, today it's Kmart. And they would all go into Kmart with their masks, and then they'd all take their masks off, and then they'd shop for hours in Kmart without a mask. They were just window shopping. And then the next day they'd go to Walmart and they would shop for hours. What are they going to do? Arrest all these women? When you're in a group, when you're standing up as a community, you're saying, come and take it. Then that's what I think it's going to come down to in your state. I don't know how else yet. You may come up with a better strategy than me, and fine, if you do, I'll support it. But I just think in your state, I don't know what else to do. We don't have constitutional officers. Am I fair? I think you and I see eye to eye on this.
Yeah, it's just an issue of, in most of those situations, the enforcement onus, those who are nullifying, is on them. In this situation, you're talking about going into a state facility.
No, I'm not.
We're going into a facility.
Run your own election outside the facility.
Create an independent election and challenge to compete with the state.
Yeah. We're going to count all of our own ballots, thank you very much. All I'm saying, I'm proposing that. I don't know. All I'm saying is, it's going to come to something like that. Maybe some civil disobedience of some kind. Because you have to be the constitutional officer. Usually you have a constitutional officer like a sheriff that'll interpose, but you don't have that. Who are your constitutional interposing left? It's you. If you read the Doctrine of the Lesser Magistrates, that's what it talks about. It says every person is responsible for the constitutional rights underneath it. You got 3 lovely boys here. You're responsible to protect their constitutional rights. You're the one who's supposed to interpose on behalf of them. So it just turns out that a group of you are going to have to interpose on behalf of your borough. I think that's what it is. I may be wrong, but you see where I'm going? And I'm not saying this could be easy.
My question, can we write in Trump if we're wanting to vote for Trump and they're taking him off the ballot? Is that something we can all organize and do?
Of course you could, and wouldn't that be lovely? Yeah. You nullify any law, any principle, any rule, any law that violates your constitutional rights, you have a right to nullify. Yeah.
It seems that throughout your presentation, the sense of urgency needs to build among us as well.
Yes.
And that, we've got our presidential election next year.
Yes.
Of course, all of our state house reps are up and half of our senators are up, so on and so forth. We need to hurry up and get this figured out, for one. For two, I don't pay attention to every polling place here, but my guess is most of them are in our schools, and the state doesn't own our schools. And so if we're looking
I like the way he's thinking.
If we're looking for somebody to interpose for us, our school board claims to be, 6/7 conservative, and our borough assembly claims to be, 5/7 conservative, so on and so forth. But that's something for us to think about in terms of how we actually do battle with our state in terms of our elections. The other, really going back to that first urgency question, though.
Strategist is one of the 7 members. That's it. You're the strategist on your team.
You guys are. Right. So the urgency thing. Can you speak to that? Because I usually sleep really well. I might not.
Because you now understand. I apologize for that. I apologize for your next 2 nights loss of sleep. I also had that problem at first once I realized how bad the problem was. But, and I had a lady call me a couple days later. She says, Dr. Frank, I am so depressed. You have destroyed my paradigm. I'm so miserable. How can you do that? But it's waking up. We're realizing the real situation we're in. I think we need to face that. And so don't be surprised if the next couple of days you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening. So, but it's good that you know, because we need to realize we have to take action. So let me say a couple of things. First thing is it's God's timing, not ours. So he's responsible for the outcome, not us. It's our job to stand. Okay, so that's what we need to do. Okay. But at the same time, people say, well, what about 2024? Okay? And I just want you to think back to 2020 for a minute. In 2020, they did a pandemic on us. They threw away our Constitution on us. They did all kinds of things. You know, in Pennsylvania, for example, in Pennsylvania, they threw out the signature requirement. They violated laws everywhere. So we can count on them doing a whole bunch of horrible things to us anyway. So really, I think our main goal right now is not necessarily to save our elections in time for 2044. I think our main goal right now is to learn, organize, strategize, be ready for next time.
First, I think that's really problematic because everybody knows this is the most important election of our lifetime. I'm just kidding.
You're right, though.
You mentioned the doctrine of the lesser magistrate, so you're talking about Matt Trewhella's doctrine.
Trewhella.
Yeah. So if anybody needs that book, I've got dozens of copies of it. And we've got dozens of copies of the Magdeburg Confession, which is the foundation for the doctrine of lesser magistrate. So if you guys have never heard of that, if you're not familiar with it, when we're all done, let me know and I can get you copies of those books. You can pay for them because they're not free, but it's really great learning opportunity.
I read it in 2020. I met Trewhella at a Patriot rally in 2020. I had no idea how valuable that was going to be for me later. That's a great book.
He was just here last month.
Oh, yeah, he's a good guy.
Yeah, super.
Yeah. Hi.
We didn't have a downtown Anchorage BLM problem during 2020, so I asked a member of the police force, Anchorage Police Force, what happened?
Yeah.
Why wasn't there? The police force by the mayor were told to stand down. They couldn't do anything. People with their rifles showed up on, I don't know what street it was, facing BLM, and they turned and left.
Ding, 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 ding. I've seen at least a dozen counties or boroughs around the country that did that exact thing. And that's what I'm asking you to do with your elections. Because you were defending yourselves. You didn't rely on the police. You did the work. And that's what I'm saying with your elections. Don't rely on your assembly. Don't rely on your police. You do the elections yourselves.
Yeah. One thing I see as a linchpin to this is Pennsylvania was not decertified. Georgia was not decertified.
Correct.
So even in spite of all the evidence that was even, prevalent then, they just certified them anyway. People's lives were threatened. The fiance of the daughter of the governor was killed. Oh, coincidence.
Right.
So how do we fight that?
You fight that by not letting them have the election. You have to take back the election.
Well, yeah, so we have the election, we vote, we know it's valid,
Right.
we turn it in.
Right.
And the count is such and such, but
You can't control what they're going to do, but you can control what you're going to do. And my solution is not based upon you being the only borough in Alaska. Once you start, then another borough joins, then another borough joins, then another borough joins. That's how you're going to win. You're not going to win by being the only borough, okay? And I don't disagree with you. And I'm not saying this is easy. The FBI came and took my phone away when I was at an airport, and they ambushed me at an airport and took my phone. They took Mike Lindell's the day before. The banks have canceled my bank accounts every day for about 3 months. There was a sheriff at my front door serving us subpoenas and whatnot. I'm not saying this is going to be easy. And you had somebody in Homer where the FBI guy smashed in their doors. Okay, that could happen here. Who knows? Especially since you don't have any constitutional protection. I don't know. But it's a question. This is a war. We have to start thinking like a war. And so, are we going to roll over and give? Are you going to roll over and give away your beautiful state, or are you going to fight for it? I think it's time to fight for it. But it's better to fight in numbers. It's like they're not going to. It's like the 40 gals at 40 super moms at Kmart. They're not going to arrest 40 moms. If it was one mom, a cop might come in and drag her out. Okay, but if it's 40 of them, they're not going to do nothing. Same with you. If you can get your borough to wake up and say we're going to run our own election. We're going to run it our way. And by the way, state, you can come watch. You can supervise everything, and everything will be transparent. Come and watch us. But we're running our own election because the way you're trying to make us, forcing us to run our election, is disenfranchising us for our constitutional rights. That gives us the right to nullify your policies.
That was a good example she gave about the constitutional protection. It wasn't there. The mayors were told, the police department to stand down. You didn't have constitutional protection. What happened? The people stepped up.
Boom.
That was the constitutional protection.
Yes, that's why that's such a good metaphor.
It was a perfect example. Thank you.
Yeah. How we doing, sir?
Just a request, I think you can do it with like 10 seconds, stroke of the key. When you said the importance, normal trend line was 30% lower than your roll.
Yes.
Could you just put that little button in there, so when I'm explaining that to our councilman, I can go, look, this is normal, this is average, and then I can go, well, the percentage. You could probably do it.
I did it already, and it's already online. It's already on my Rumble channel. Your graphs are already there, exactly the one you just asked for. It shows that right. Sorry, I'm getting there.
And it's on the same graph where the other two lines are. I can just click one and go.
I think this is the one you're talking about.
And there's.
Oops. Shoot. That's the problem with only use one hand. It's on my Rumble channel. I posted all these graphs on my Rumble channel. This is the one I'm talking about. That's the 30%. That's
Where's
the
30%?
This is the one.
Oh yeah, right there. Yeah, that one. Okay. Great. Thanks.
And these are all on my Rumble channel already. And I apologize, I don't have your own borough up there yet, but I'll do that tonight. Say again? Oh, do you want it to say 30% on it? It's the population trend. And this is the rolls, and so you can just look at that and say you've got, what is it, 100, 200, oh, I gave it 212,000 out of 600,000. It's 30%. Yeah.
As I saw your thing here, you said it started in 1996. So then I calculated that. My math is going to be wrong, so you better check me. But now we're at 23, so that's about 27 years. Every 2 years, you were saying that it jumped 10%. So in other words, at this point right now, we're 135% cooked. The frog has been boiled to 135%.
That's a common math problem people get. What's your denominator going to be? And you just switch the denominator, but you're dead on. It is 135%, yeah.
One of the things when the nice lady there was talking about the folks showing up with the rifles down in Anchorage and also in Boise when they showed up, and then Dave said that they had the right to do that because they lack constitutional protection from their police force. Actually, that's wrong. They don't have constitutional protection.
That's correct.
From their police force.
The police force is not your constitutional defense.
There's three cases, two from the Supreme Court, DeShazer versus Winnebago, and the U.S. Supreme Court said that you have no constitutional right to protection from your police force.
That's correct.
Castle Rock versus Gonzalez, same thing.
Yes.
U.S. Supreme Court case, no constitutional right to protection from your police force. And then state of Florida versus Scott Peterson, that scumbag SRO from the school shooting down there in Florida who hid outside while that guy was murdering all those children.
I remember that.
He was found innocent, absolved of every single 135 criminal charges.
Because he's not responsible for their constitutional rights.
Because he's not responsible to protect them. The government has no responsibility to protect you. That's your problem.
He's exactly right, which is why I was so surprised when I came to your state. I had no idea what I was walking into. Almost every state has a constitutional officer in their counties, the sheriff. You're right on. And that's why I'm debating this with you in a little bit. You have no one defending your constitutional rights except you. That's why I think it's coming down to that. I think it's going to have to be you. And I would recommend that you do that collectively so that it's not just one of you getting your doors kicked in. And they're not going to come arrest all 40 of the super moms. But if it's only one mom standing up, maybe she shouldn't do that because they'll probably come pound her door in. Like if you watch that movie Police State, did you see Sharona Bishop in that? That's from, she and I are the ones working in Mason County that did that whole Tina Peters thing. I was the one that red pilled that clerk, Tina Peters. She's one of the first clerks ever. I told you, I'm always in the right place at the right time. If you see something happen in the country that's like an election bump, I was there. It's like the hand of God, man. Boom, 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 boom. It's amazing.
So you're saying everywhere you go, citizens get arrested?
Oh boy, I don't know about. I do joke about it though. I am a troublemaker, absolutely. But I'm a catalyst for change. I left out some of my other stories that I could have told, but I could keep you here all night, and I had to try to pick and choose. Yeah.
Would it be beneficial to try and get sheriffs within our boroughs?
Would it be beneficial to try to get sheriffs within your boroughs? You bet it would, if you could. But I was just on the radio with that guy, Bob. And he said that's one of his big issues. In other words, it would be nice if you elected constitutional officers.
You're right.
And it's not one person, it's we the people.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. You're talking constitutional amendment there. If you're gonna go chase a constitutional amendment in this state.
Did I show you your legislator?
Yeah. Well, you look at your legislature,
Yes.
and it's a 59-1.
Yes.
Right? It really is.
Yes.
And then if you're gonna say, well, let's do a ballot initiative then, and then you're gonna have $50 million spent against you from outside money. No. The direct route is the route to take here.
That's what I agree with you. I'm not saying it's not a good idea, but you're not going to get it passed in this legislature with this. I mean,
You're not gonna
this
get
is
it passed
59 to
for
1.
10 years.
Yeah.
We can't even get them to come up here. They were
Yes.
told to move up here.
Yes.
We passed a ballot measure.
Yeah.
They were supposed to be in Willow. They're not here, are they?
Yep.
What happened to the money?
Legislators just defunded.
Right. So I spent all of 2021 when they were trying to fix it legislatively. I learned my lesson. I'm slow, but I get there, okay? In 2022, I started doing grassroots work. We are winning grassroots battles everywhere. That's where your power is. And so even though I love David, please don't expect him to be able to solve your problems at the legislative level. You're going to need to do it locally, and then when you succeed locally, you're going to be able to go to David and say, look how good this is, and then maybe he'll propose a bill that won't get passed for 10 years, but maybe down the road it'll eventually get passed. Don't expect them to save you. It's going to have to be you. Save yourself. Yes, ma'am. Oh, sorry, there's another ma'am. No, the geologist.
No, I know what happened.
She takes things for granted. Yeah.
Mother Nature. I heard just a nice heuristic, and so when people walk out tonight, I'm not so depressed, but I heard from Steve Bannon today. Perhaps I'm a day late seeing his show, but because I stream it and I have bad eyes, but at any rate, the heuristic is QUD, K-W-U-D, knowledge, wisdom, understanding, and discernment. And I think that's what you're all about, and I thank you.
You're very welcome. Happy to be with you. Yeah. Thank you. You're welcome.
I just wanted to know, how are we going to,
Boy, you have a big voice.
I used to be a lifeguard. I can yell. Anyway, how are we going to organize?
That's what the 7 steps were. And did you bring in those? If you connect, you took a picture of my contact information, right? The bottom one is my email. Send me an email and I'll send you the 7 steps. But really, David is here. David is here. He's my COA, that David, but there are 2 of them. Dave Johnson. He's the Cause of America representative that is Mike Lindell's organization that I work through, that organized me being here. And so sign up with him and we'll get you, remember step 1 of the 7 steps was get connected. Get connected and he'll organize the team for you, and that connects you to the NCOA and connects you to all the voter rolls, and I'll give you all that stuff and get you organized. And if you go to my Rumble channel, you can get a copy of the 7 steps and you can follow it. And that's a very general thing. It's, yeah.
Dave, are you doing that just through Frank Social?
Yes, it's on Frank's Social. It's, it'll say Cause of America, Alaska. So if you're on Frank's Social, you look down there and it'll say Cause of America, Alaska. I've started posting things in there that show you what's wrong with our elections. Information talking about like Eric, ranked choice voting, the different stuff. We have some of the reports that we've turned in. We made a mistake, like everybody else, like he's just told you. We've got lawsuits against them, we've done all kinds of stuff, and it goes nowhere. It's a waste of time. So this is what we need. We're done. We're going to take them to the public court. It's going to be us judging them in public. Remember that lady from California, the black lady,
Maxine Waters.
Maxine Waters, what did she say? You get in their face. You tell them they're not wanted. You tell them this. This is our only tool we have left. And it can't be illegal because no Democrat got arrested.
It's not our only tool, it's just the First Amendment tools. We have Second Amendment tools. But
Yeah,
we should use our First Amendment tools.
We want to start with the First Amendment.
Yes.
So we need to tell them it's not acceptable. That's where we're going to go. And we're going to organize stuff, we're going to get it all together, and we're going to tell them, no, we're not taking this. We want machines gone, hand count, paper ballots, ID, and then we want to have local poll books. Yes. Okay? That's where we're going.
And the rolls have to be cleaned up.
That's what he
We
meant.
don't care. We're going to make our own rolls right here. We'll take what they have, we'll clean it, it's ours. This is the borough's roll book, okay? We turn it over to the borough, we give it through the borough. We only deal with the borough. We don't care what the state does. The state is not going to treat us right. We have no constitutional, we have Edna. That's the best we can do. We can elect Edna and remove Edna. We have those members in the borough there that are electable. We talk to them, the assembly, excuse me. So those are our contacts. Those are the ones we're going to go to. Those are the ones we're going to push. All right? We're going to get them to go this way. And we've already got that. We already vote by hand count now. All right? Our next thing is get rid of the voter rolls off the state. We'll do our own. We'll make them correct. We have the data.
We got rid of the machines, right?
Yeah.
For the
For the
Just borough elections only.
borough elections. But once we get it all set up, we'll go away from it.
State and federal are still on machines. They own those elections.
And that's the problem.
Unless we take them back.
And we're going to take them back.
Get them out of here.
This is their Antifa coming after us.
That's right.
So we're going to let them know. We're not doing it.
Yeah.
You too, Pat.
So as a borough, we can say, we don't want them in our borough for state elections or federal elections. Can we do that right now?
You're putting that kindly, but yeah.
He knows them all.
Then
That's good.
All right. Thank you all very much for coming tonight. Pleasure to be here with you. Thank you very much to our esteemed guest for flying up all the way to Alaska.
My pleasure.
At this juncture, I am reminded that he did so at his expense, and I
found my folder.
and so that he can continue to do so.
That's the can.
My family and I will be making a donation to cover some of those expenses, but I know I can't afford the 7 plane tickets that it took him to get up here and hit these different towns. So perhaps you know someone who could also help in that. I am reminded as I'm hearing all this talk back and forth about lesser magistrates and who's going to fix the problem and is the sheriff going to fix the problem and whatnot. I'm reminded that we have this thing called the Constitution, and do you know what the Founding Fathers called this? They called this, speaking of the U.S. Constitution, they called it a paper parchment barrier. They said, you can pass this, you know how thick it is? It's paper thin. And anyone can violate it, and if you allow them to do so, they will. So, it's your job as an American citizen, as an Alaskan, to protect your rights and not to wait around for someone else to do that. So, thank you very much, and with that, I will say goodnight. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, you guys know the drill. Thank you very much for being here today. Like, share, click that bell to be notified. You can always find us on X, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, Rumble, and our website when we're live. And if you're at our website, or if you just want to go take a look, go to our website. And while you're there, click that support button. Every penny goes right back into what we're doing here. I appreciate the support that we get. And we are putting it to good use, I'll guarantee you that. And for all the supporters out there that have contributed over the past week, since I started restreaming again, you guys rock away. Thank you so much again for being here. Don't forget, like and share this video. That is the way we can beat social media and get the truth out there for everyone to hear.
Mounting pressure on him.